All right, we're live. How you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah. Well, yeah. I guess what I'll start this off with is anybody watching this should go to George's channel right now and subscribe. His stuff is great. And one thing I want to keep pointing out to people is it's so good to hear differing opinions. Like you might hear somebody talk and they might say something that you're really not into, and then you'll go, "Oh, I'm a vegan and they're a vegan, but I don't like that idea," and unsubscribe. I think the best thing you can do when you're wanting to figure out what things are good or moral is to be challenged by other ideas. So, George, I think you have one of the best channels as far as covering a wide variety of topics. And I'd say half the things I talk about because I get inspired by watching your stuff.
Well,
So,
thanks so much. I didn't know that. Yeah, thanks. That's good to hear.
yeah, definitely. How's your day going?
Good. Yeah. Yeah. As I was saying before the stream, it's nice and hot now in the UK. Summer's finally here, so the miserable weather is no longer, at least for however many more months until it goes back. And yeah, looking forward to good stuff happening this summer. We got the UK vegan camp out next month, so I'm really looking forward to that. You said before, Carson, you wanted to come to the UK, so you should definitely fly over for that one year if you can, because it's the best
Gotcha.
vegan event that there is to go to. It's an amazing event. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, all stuff has all been good with me today.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's just hop right into it. I watched your talk you did with it was a debate, old school versus new school, and it was on what's his face, David Rams.
Mm.
Um, oh man, separately at some point I want to talk about when the idea of everybody talking about their definitions on veganism came up. You were the only one that had an acceptable answer. Everybody refused to answer, and then even David said, "I don't think I don't think an answer is needed." And sorry, I just thought that was funny. But anyways, the thing that we're going to be talking about is on there somewhere in the comments of that talk. There was the idea of uh, taking an animal from a farm. I said I don't think it's good to steal an animal from a farm, and you thought I was joking, and so we're going to talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my thoughts on why I think we should not do this, and then just have you go ahead and react to it. Okay?
Sure. Yeah, I'm quite intrigued to hear why on earth you could think that this is a bad thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, it's a numbers thing. It's completely a mathematical moral issue. Um, so I don't have all the details exactly of how farms work out, but um, farms must work something like this. A farm knows how much meat they can sell to various stores or to companies that will sell it to stores. And the demand will make them either have more or less. It'll be by weight or number. And so that's why it's good when we go vegan because we're not putting it in demand. Somebody says, "Why should I go vegan?" You're not putting it in demand, therefore less is needed. They breed less animals, so on and so forth. So that's how it must work. And so the thing I didn't think about until last night, thinking about this talk, is that there must be some kind of an effect where a farm decides how much they're going to have based on how much they end up with. So if they decide I need this much weight, and there's a likelihood of, say, if I had a farm that had 1,000 chickens, there's going to be a likelihood of maybe 25 of them dying, maybe a likelihood of 5 of them disappearing, so on and so forth. And based on the numbers at the end, if they met their goal, they're going to need to factor that in for when they produce their next amount. So if somebody goes in and liberates a chicken, takes that chicken, takes it to a farm, then that's one less chicken there. Now, it happening one time ever might not make a big deal. But if we're talking about if this is right or wrong, then we could imagine it maybe happening a couple times. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers would look like. But even if you had a farm that had like 10,000 chickens and you took 10 of them out, it's going to show up at the end. The math is going to pan out to where they're going to have to breed, whether it's for that season. I don't know if they call it a season of like how they work with meat, but then either the next time around they'll have to breed more, or as soon as they recognize it, they'll have to breed more. And what I would say is if we consider it immoral to breed an animal, then if an animal's already bred and we can take that one and it had a sucky first half of a life, but we can let it live the rest of its life out well, and that makes another animal be bred in its place, then the only thing we've done is we've caused the initial animal, in a sense, in a weird timey-wimey sense, that initial animal to be bred and have a half good life. Because the outcome of there being another chicken that took its place to be bred and have a miserable life and killed will pan out the same.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand. I mean, let's say this chicken who would have been liberated, they would have not have been liberated. That chicken would just be sold anyway, and then they're just going to see that as demand. So I don't see how liberating that chicken and actually causing them a bit of profit loss. Yeah, they're ultimately going to replace, if they notice, by the way, if they notice a missing animal, they're going to replace that animal. But that's just the same if that animal's to be sold anyway. There could actually be the argument that the animal not being liberated and being sold, it might make them actually increase the demand even more, because it's not like they're just replacing, what they see as a stolen piece of stock. They're actually saying, oh, this product is popular, it's selling. I mean, face it, there's a reason shops,
selling.
But Carson, there's a reason that shops don't want you to steal their products. Remember, these animals are treated as like units of stock, as a shop would be.
Stealing the meat afterwards would be different.
I'm not sure I can see how.
But it would be barely different. It would still be bad.
Well, Carson, do you think a farmer would agree with activists liberating an animal? Because if it was as bad as you make it out to be, surely they would almost be wanting vegans to do this. If it benefited...
It would be the only benefit to them, the only benefit to us vegans doing it would be that the farmer who we view as a bad guy would be put out cost-wise a little bit, which could have an effect in our favor, but not enough that would outweigh the fact that we are causing a chicken to be bred into existence. But I think maybe the part that we might need to bring it down to a smaller scale. But imagine a farm had a bunch of chickens, and the stores that are going to, like a farmer having chickens that's going to butcher the chickens and then have all this chicken meat, they get nothing unless they can sell that to a place. So them having the farm is based on the demand. So if a store says, I need 1,000 pounds of chicken flesh, then the farmer will do some form of what they need to do to get 1,000. They might aim for 1,100. That way they can account for potential issues like vegans stealing chickens and chickens dying, diseases and that kind of stuff. And then that way they can end up with the right number. But if something causes them to need to change that buffer, then they will. So if they need 100, what did I say? 100,000? No. If they need 1,000 pounds of chicken, and let's just call a chicken a pound. So they have 1,000 chickens. They have 1,000 chickens. They need 1,000 pounds. So they probably need 1,050 chickens. But they are only deciding they need 1,050 because they don't want to go under the amount they have. And that's based off knowing chickens have died. If a farmer has never had a dead chicken or a stolen chicken, they're just going to have 1,000. And if their chickens start dying a little bit or people start stealing them, then they're going to go, okay, we need 1,005 or we need 1,010 as our buffer. So the farmer needing a certain amount and then not being able to reach it because somebody stole that chicken will just make them have a higher number for their next year. It must, right?
One thing I'd say is I don't think it's as noticeable as you're making out, perhaps. Remember, at these concentration camps where animals are bred sometimes by the millions at certain farms or by the thousands or whatever, they're always going to be selling a certain number of animals, but there's still going to be animals there at that farm. It's not like they sort of breed them all, then sort of sell them all off at once. And it's like, oh, we have to breed this many extra in reserve because this many are missing. But in any case, if they're already factoring in that chickens are dying, sheep are dying, this is something that I think they've already factored in anyway. I still can't see how there's going to be some kind of...
I think they'd have to factor it in based off the potential outcomes. So if a certain factory has 10 chickens stolen by vegans a year, then they might factor that in. And that's fine, but they would factor that in and therefore breed more. If you don't steal the chicken, they won't factor that part in. Now, if 10 chickens die of disease every year, they'll factor that in because they want to meet demand. If they're making a profit, they'll factor that in and they'll be like, oh shit, chicken got disease. I'm pissed about it, but I'm not just going to give less than the stores need. I want to reach what the stores need. So anything that leads to that. And so you could just play the numbers game. So if you went and stole one chicken, maybe it wouldn't get noticed. But if they have 1,000 chickens and you steal 500 of them, what's going to happen?
Say again, the last question again. If they have how many chickens and someone...
So they have 1,000 and you steal 500. Obviously, these higher numbers will make them just call the police, and the police will do an investigation, and you could never get away with getting another 500. But set that aside for a second. Let's just say you actually can be successful. So they get told they have 1,050 because they have a buffer of 50, and they get told they need 1,000 chickens worth of meat to go to the store to make their profits. They're going to make a ton of money off this, and you go in and steal 500 of them. So they're going to lose profits on half of what they have. What do you think they're going to do the next year?
I don't see how that would be any different as if they sold the chickens. In fact, I actually think they would just breed more if the 500 were there and they sold because they think, damn, this is profitable. The fact is, an animal liberation activist going in and liberating those 500 chickens, yes, they might do something to safeguard against that in some way. But that's ultimately setting them back. They do not want this to happen. Like it's very bad news for their business if a liberator goes in and liberates 500 chickens.
It's bad news for the business for sure. They don't get paid for that. So it's bad news for them, and it's bad news for the animals that are forced bred that wouldn't have been bred.
But
because that chicken meat is still needed.
But don't we want this farm to go out of business? Don't we want them to?
If we can be so successful at it that they go out of business, which there are some farms that we wouldn't want to go out of business. There are farms that are killing animals that if we could snap our fingers and make them go out of business, we wouldn't want to. And we can talk about that in a second. But yes, if there was a really bad factory farm that you could get away with stealing so much that they just give up and they go, I'm not gonna do this business anymore and quit. That is the win. But if you don't get that, then no matter what, it's a lose. Because if they are making so much money, let's say it costs them $10 to raise a chicken its entire life, and they get $50 or something. I mean, this is a random number. It really doesn't matter. But let's just say they get let's do a different number. Let's just say that hypothetically they would get like 10 times what it costs to have it. Therefore, them the next year, like breeding extra to make sure that they get their profits. This would only matter if there's profits, but I mean that's what we're talking about, a profitable company. So if they losing a chicken getting stolen, they just go like, oh man, I don't want to keep losing these, but I only got paid for providing whatever percent, 90% of what the store wanted. I want to make sure that when it comes time for harvest, what do they call it? Not harvesting. That wouldn't be their word. That's our word. Time for slaughter. When it comes time for slaughter, that they want to have the maximum amount that a store will buy from them. They're going to do whatever they can do without losing profits. So if you steal if they have 1,000 chickens, let's say you don't steal 500. Let's just say they have 1,000 and you steal 100. They're going to make some profit, but they're going to lose 10% of their profit. So they're going to make sure the next year I get so much profit from this that I'm going to have this buffer even wider. I just can't imagine them doing it any differently. Like how could you as an animal owner that raises and kills animals not replace the stolen one?
But selling all those animals is just going to create more demand anyway. I think I wish I was more skilled in number one maths and number two economics to push back against.
Wait, the selling
doesn't
raise it,
but
right?
But it does, because that's how a business grows. So businesses, let's say there was someone started off a farm and they were just breeding 10 chickens a year. If people kept buying from that farm and they had no stock loss, they're just going to breed more and more and more chickens. Us going in and liberating animals is just going to fuck up their strategy, and it's actually going to help shut down the farm.
No. I don't think they wouldn't breed past the demand, but also the amount they breed wouldn't cause extra demand.
Well, they would breed. That's how animal farms grow. That's how any business grows. It's loads more of people are buying our product. We're selling this. Let's create more products. So it's.
But it would only work if the people bought the product. So that's how this kind of thing works, is the demand comes first. That's why it's good to be vegan. You cut out the demand that you normally would have caused. Unless I'm misunderstanding something, this would be a case like, let's say I owned a company that made pencils, and let's say in the US, 1 billion pencils sold every year. If I make 1 billion and they all sell, I'm like, yeah, awesome. If I make 2 billion and 1 billion sell, I'm not making anything extra because I made extra pencils. If they have extra meat that nobody needs to buy because they made more than the amount for demand, it would only cause extra demand if because of that they sold it for less or something weird, right? Like they're not gonna get more people to buy meat they don't need.
No, I don't know if we might be getting our wires crossed here or something, so to speak. But maybe I need, look, this can be my homework. Maybe I need to go away with more of a slightly complex understanding of how exactly the economic side of this would happen. But I think in any case, look with your pencil analogy, for example. I mean, if a fire ravaged one of the pencil factories in Carson's pencil enterprise, that's ultimately a bad thing. It's not going to mean you're going to yes, you're going to make the pencils to replace those. But if the fire didn't ravage the factory, you're going to make pencils to replace those, and you're going to get more money from it anyway. And there's more long-term success for the business. Think of the liberation as almost like a fire at a factory, at the pencil factory.
Okay, so I make 1 billion to sell 1 billion. And one of the factories dies, and or gets burnt down. So I lose 10% of that. I lose that much money. I have to make the extra, and then I've lost money. Yes, that part's good. Making, considering what we don't like about this, making that harm the person causing harm is good. The problem is when you make the extra 10% of pencils, that harms nothing. So the math works out. But then when you look at it as, if you burn down a factory, you don't have to burn down the factory of chickens, but essentially you might as well. Because when you liberate the ones you've liberated, that same number are being reproduced. But not if you don't liberate them.
Right. Let's simplify this. Are you basically saying that if activists liberate animals, more animals would be bred than otherwise would be bred if those liberated animals would have not been liberated and would actually be bought?
Yes. I can't see how not. Imagine what if I had a backyard chickens and I was having them give me eggs or whatever. Let's say I had 6 of them, and because I had 6, I got exactly the amount of eggs I needed. I sold them to some neighbors and stuff, and I had 6. If somebody comes and steals one of my chickens, I'm going to go buy a new chicken. And me buying a new chicken is going to be putting another chicken in demand. People are going to make more chickens to sell more chickens. But me not buying a chicken makes the revenue go down from the store. Yeah.
But that analogy doesn't work, because you'd be buying a new chicken to replace a chicken who is never to be sold to slaughter. All farmed animals are being sold to slaughter, even on egg farms. But
Yeah,
backyard
that
chicken thing doesn't work the same way.
no, I think it does. The outcome, the slaughter and the eating, doesn't affect it.
It does, because the chickens in your backyard egg scenario, yeah, if someone went into there and liberated a chicken, you're going to buy a chicken to replace that, and that's going to increase the demand. I understand, but with a farm, all those chickens are going to be sold to be murdered anyway. All you're doing is putting a dent in their profits by liberating a chicken there.
Nope, because you're adding the demand that wouldn't have been there.
But you're adding demand by buying chickens, because the more the reason 90 billion land animals are being massacred every year is because even on these small farms, which are no longer even small farms really anymore, so many people are buying animal products, not liberating the animals, buying animal products, that it's just making them breed more and more and more and more to meet demand. Because the more successful your business is, the more products you sell, the more units of stock you don't have lost or damaged, the better your business does, and the more you want to grow from that. I'm not, again, I don't know. There might be some slight flaws here in my argument, as I'm not an economist or anything. I'm not an expert on this, but I still I'm not convinced of your side here.
Okay, I have 10 chickens in my backyard. I can breed chickens whenever I want, but I don't want to breed them unless I can sell them. I have people that are going to buy approximately 10 a year from me, and I have 10. If people buy 10, I breed 10 more. I sell that 10 the next year and the next year. Now, if I'm going to sell 10 a year, and I know I'm going to be able to sell 10 a year, and I can breed them whenever I want, but I'm not going to waste my time breeding them if they don't sell. If George came into my backyard and took one of those chickens to liberate it, and then I had 9, I'd go, oh, cool, that's all right. I'm going to go. I mean, it might harm me financially a little bit, but not as much as the reward I get from the profits. So I'm going to breed my new chicken. Okay, now I have 10 again. So I'm good. Now, that means that year I bred 11, where I would have bred 10. And if you come in and steal 2, I'm going to breed 2 more, which means I had 10 initially. You stole 2. You gave them a good end of their lives, but I bred 2 more. So now that year I bred 12. And I would have to do that if I want to sell 10, because 2 of them disappeared. So because of George, there were 12 chickens bred that year instead of 10. 2 extra animals that can feel and suffer and don't want to be bred into existence for this reason. That only happened because of George. Does that make more sense?
I'm not sure, but why, if someone bought 2 of those chickens, would you not breed 2 more?
If they bought 2 of them, then it would just change. The numbers would go up. If I knew I was going to sell 12 a year instead of 10, because normally, let's say I sell 10, and then 2 more people became customers of mine, and it's like, oh, sweet, I sell 12 a year. Okay, so I breed 12, and I'm going to sell 12, but George steals 2. Now I have to breed 2 more. So now I have 14 that I bred, but I can only sell 12 because 2 of them are living on a nice sanctuary, which is great for those 2, but it's not great for the 2 extra I had to breed to replace them. Now I could go, they're stolen, I'm not going to breed more, and I tell those customers, sorry, I can't do business with you. That's just bad for business, so I probably wouldn't do that.
But if someone kept liberating the chickens from your farm, you're obviously going to make a loss on the profits, and you're going to think this is a bad idea for business. And that's ultimately, that's many future generations of chickens spared. So this is financial damage to the business. And I'm still not getting the maths with if you're selling these chickens, you're ultimately going to be breeding more to replace them.
Yeah, so let's say I knew 10 people that own, I mean, chickens are small, so people eat more than 1 a year or whatever. But imagine like a cow. A cow is so big, a person that eats meat could survive on a cow a year, right? So let's say I had 10 cows in my backyard, And I had 10 customers that they don't like to get their meat at the store or whatever. They just want to get the ones that I breed. So I have 10, and I have 10 customers, and every year the same 10 customers are going to come to me. I slaughter these 10 cows. Each customer gets a cow, and they have it for a year, and I'm only going to see them the next year. I think it's easier to bring it down to smaller numbers. If while I was on vacation, George came into my backyard and was like, oh, I'm going to get one of these out of here, and you got one of the cows out of there, and I came home and I'm like, oh, I have to have 10 to sell this year. I breed one extra cow, and now I have 10. So that year in 2023, because George stole one, then in 2023, 11 were bred. 10 of those 11 will get slaughtered and sold, and one of those is living on a nice farm. Now, if George did this 4 times that year, I would breed 4 extra. 14 would be bred, which I'm guessing like 14 is worse than 10 as far as breeding animals pointlessly into existence. Now, 4 of those will be on a sanctuary farm while 10 are slaughtered. But if you never stole any, 10 are still going to be slaughtered. So, yeah.
In your analogy here, are you... I hate maths. But I'll just ask a question.
Yeah.
In your analogy here, is it that this little Carson's backyard farm of 10 chickens that you're running, or 10 cows, whatever it is, are they all sold for slaughter at the same time? You breed 10 for 10 to be sold, and then...
Yeah, I mean, it would vary. If the new one that was bred couldn't get to full size in time, I'd probably have to tell my customer, like, hey, I'm going to get it to you a couple months late. Or I would look at it as, okay, now that I notice I might have an animal stolen, or in a different case, an animal gets sick and die, I need to sell 10, so I'm going to breed 12. I'm going to breed 12, sell 10, and then I have this buffer. But I would need to increase the buffer based on the likelihood of me needing more cows.
I think when we're talking about the actual farms that activists go in to liberate animals, what's happening is you have many hundreds or thousands, whatever, of animals there, and liberating one doesn't really affect the system in any way, in order to just dent the profits, often in an actually unnoticeable way. Mm-hmm. And the way that they sell these animals off to slaughter, they just pack however many there are into a truck all at once, but there's however many hundred or thousand still remaining there at the farm. I think with these analogies you're making about you have this exact many animals, I think they rely on the assumption that they're all sort of, it's almost as if they like magically appear and then all go to slaughter at the same time, and then exactly 10 replace them or something like that, when that's not really how farming works. You've always got a surplus of animals there at the farm anyway, because they actually only send a small percentage of those animals off to slaughter at once, because the rest of them are all at different ages. But ultimately, I still think if what you were saying was true, farmers would almost, if stealing it or liberating, should I say, animals from farms breeds more, farmers would like secretly love this. They would like be secretly wanting activists to go into the farm.
Well, no, because they don't get a benefit from it. They lose the profits of they lose whatever they put into the one you stole. That's the only thing they lose. But no, they wouldn't secretly love it, because that's the thing. It might seem like, since I'm saying this will hurt animals, that it'll benefit farmers, because we view farmers as they suck and they don't want animals to do well. Both of them lose.
But if you're saying they breed more because you liberate one, those more that they're breeding are going to be sold to slaughter, which just makes them more profit. It
not
would
more
make
profit.
them more profit.
No. They're breeding it to replace it, so it's the same profit. If I sell 10 and you steal one and I breed an 11th in, I'm still selling 10, so I make the exact same profit. I just lose whatever amount of finances it took to raise the one you stole. That's what I lose.
Yeah, I'm still...
Yeah. No, it's all right.
This is something I need to go away and research more. I'm obviously I'm obviously skeptical of the argument that liberating animals from concentration camps would be anything other than a good thing. So
Well,
I, but I,
let's look at it a sadder case. What about monkeys in testing? If there's
yeah,
a building that has 100 monkeys that they do testing on, and you can imagine the worst testing possible, it doesn't matter. I view this as probably worse than a lot of factory farming. If they have 100 in there and they do their tests and they replace ones when they need to replace them, if you go in and you sneak in and you get a key and you take a monkey out, and at best odds you figure out how to get that monkey to a reasonable place to have a sanctuary, which let's just assume you magically can, that company that does research is going to need another monkey. They're gonna steal them from the wild or breed them into existence. If something is needed, then stealing will make it go back. Even in the worst case scenario, you go steal a slave to free a slave from a slave owner back in the day. Now, I'm not saying I would have the emotional ability to not free the slave, but if I could free them and magically get away from it, I have to remember they're replacing that guy. And they're probably, with slaves, breeding that replacement.
so wait, so you would say even at the time of human slavery in the States, whatever, that even liberating a slave from a slave plantation would be a bad thing ultimately?
It would be at very least immoral. I don't know if I'd do it or not, but I usually, it's my analogy I use for pet owning. I usually refer to the idea of if a slave was up for sale and I was a billionaire and I had no interest in slavery, I thought slavery was horrible, but I saw somebody being sold and I looked at their eyes and I go, I'm going to buy that person. I buy them and I tell them, hey, I'm against slavery. I can't really free you because of how our situation is, but you can live at my house, have the best food. We're going to be best friends. Would this be a good thing to do? And the answer is no, because demand, again, if you did that, that one person would be having a great life, but they would go and see, okay, how many did we sell here? We sold this many. This is how many slaves we're going to bring back. And that's why even if you treat an animal well, buying an animal at a store, if you go to Petco, you guys don't probably have Petco or PetSmart. So. Okay. Well, anyways, if you go to a pet store and buy a dog, you might be buying that dog because you think somebody else that would buy it would be a horrible dog owner. But you buying it tells the store, okay, let's get more puppies from the puppy mill. Let's breed them. So yes, essentially, I think it's morally wrong in all the calculations. But I would probably try to free all the slaves.
Yeah, I mean, let's skipping over all this math stuff because this is what I'm terrible at. This is like the worst. This is the thing that I'm the worst person in the world at is the maths and the economical stuff. Yeah. So why don't we look at this from a Kantist philosophical standpoint? Now, if we take your position to its conclusion where people have this idea you have, versus if people take my position to its logical conclusion, ultimately, this is going to be a good thing for farms in the long run if we take it to your conclusion, because ultimately what's going to happen is there's going to be the idea that liberating animals and affecting the profit losses and rescuing those individual animals is some kind of bad thing. And that's just going to help farms profit in the long run and stay in business. Now, if loads and loads and loads of people take on the pro-animal liberation philosophy, this will ultimately dent the profits of many, many farms in the long run, liberate many, many animals. Even in the short run, if you say mathematically it will breed more animals, it will just be in the short term. But think how many concentration camps we would ultimately shut down because, number one, it's dented their profits so much. Number two, people actually, it becomes seen as a bad and evil thing to go into animal farming because you're creating a culture where we're saying these farms are ultimately slave plantations, concentration camps, and this is therefore an unpalatable thing for people to want to be going into. People don't want to be seen as like a slave owner or as a Nazi on a concentration camp. If we can create a culture where we see animal liberation as ultimately a good thing against an evil system, surely my philosophy here is the much better way forward in the long term, no?
Yes, but I don't think the stealing them will convince people of that. That would just be the aftermath. You have to convince them first, because I think the only people in favor of the stealing them would be us vegans, the people that already hold that philosophy. So yeah, I think you're right that if people looked at it like this, then people look at it like that. But stealing them, I don't think would make it. If right now there was some news article that said vegan went in and liberated all these chickens or whatever, then I'm guessing any non-vegan that saw that would just call that theft, and they wouldn't be a fan.
Well, yeah, they probably would say that, but obviously they'd be hypocrites because they love it when in China they liberate the dogs, right, from the dog meat farm.
Oh, they are hypocrites. Yeah.
Right, but okay, even not taking just the societal thing yet into account, the number of vegans is raising every single year. If every single vegan had your philosophy that liberating farmed animals was somehow a bad thing, that would be ultimately a good thing for farms. Farms would love that. Whereas if that every vegan had my philosophy that it was a good thing, this would be, especially with the number of vegans that we have growing every year, this would be a very damaging thing for the animal agriculture industry.
It could be, if done right, could be damaging. No matter what it's damaging to animals, it could be damaging to the farms. And if it's done very well, impossibly well, it could be damaging to the farms so much that it has a positive effect on animals. But I don't think it would ever reach the positive effect. I really don't think it would.
Well, would it not reach the would it not reach the positive effect just like it would do in other justice movements throughout history? I mean, there were slave liberations at the time of slavery, and this was ultimately seen as like a good thing, and these slave plantations surely suffered as a result of it.
Yeah, they did. They probably did suffer. Overall, though, it would be interesting to look at the numbers. I don't know if they kept the numbers, but I'd want to find out if every time a slave escaped, if that slave owner got a new slave, because that would be what matters.
Yeah, but even in that analogy, those slaves would just die on the farm and they wouldn't get profit from that. With farming, it works different because these animals are actually sold off to slaughter. Now, so I'm going to make quite a controversial statement here.
I've never heard you do that before.
It's actually better to liberate a farmed animal than it is to liberate an enslaved human. Because from an economic standpoint, human slaves stay on the plantation for the whole lifetime. They don't get sold off to be murdered and eaten. Whereas with the animal cases, they do. So with the slave plantation argument, perhaps you could make this argument as, well, now they're just going to buy another slave. Whereas in the animal argument, these animals are just being sold off to have their throat cut anyway. So all you're doing is you're liberating a chicken, stopping them from having their throat cut, stopping future babies that chicken has from hatching and also having the same thing happens to them. Will they replace the animal potentially if they notice, if it even is noticeable, which in the majority of cases, I don't actually think it is, because they just sell X amount.
At some point, it must be noticeable. Now, you might be right. If you go to every single factory farm and take one, you might be right. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to look into it though. I'm going to call some farms and find out. I'm going to ask them in a sneaky way where they don't know they're talking to a vegan. I'm going to pretend I'm like a college student or a high school student doing a paper. Because I'd be curious. I'm guessing they need a certain weight at the end of the year. Yeah. And if they don't have that weight, they fail. And therefore, whoever's hired to make sure they have that weight is going to factor in anything like runaway animals, disease animals, anything like that. And so I think the number would have to affect it. But you're right about the slave thing in a sense. I am not going to claim that I care more about one animal than one human. But you're right about the idea. It's the reason why we think dairy is worse than beef, is because that animal is like living out its life. Like actually, and so maybe I just figured out why you're not right about the slave, Because maybe we would want to rescue a dairy cow or a slave over a beef cow because of its extended torture.
Well, one thing I want to make clear is that the dairy industry actually is the beef industry. A lot of people kind of mistake them as separate entities. I know you said a moment ago, dairy is worse than beef, but dairy basically is beef, right? So they take a mother cow, rape her with a steel instrument. The males are sold off for slaughter, and the female, once they're done giving milk as slaves on this farm, they'll be sold off to slaughter as well. And this is the same process with animals. The wool industry is the lamb industry, for example. It's like when people think that wool is like this byproduct of lamb meat, but it's actually not. Lambs are bred as much for their wool as they are for their meat. So these industries, they basically are just the same thing.
Gotcha. Okay, well let's pause that topic there. Because I think, like you were saying, you don't feel comfortable with numbers, and so you might want to look into things further. I want to look into things further too. There's a couple people that I very much respect their logical thinking that are in the comments that I think at one point said they disagreed with something I said, and so I want to chat with them too, and then maybe we'll do a follow-up on the topic. I'd be curious to hear what you think later on down the road.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if all credit to you. You've set up this live stream with quite a controversial opinion that many people, when they hear it, they'll be like, wait, what? Did this guy just say that or whatever? But if you do indeed have a point that it is somehow worse for animals when we liberate them, in the long run, if we liberate them, then this is something we would need to re-strategize on. I still believe that we need to do radical actions. But yes, if there is some... If in some way it does actually harm animals when we liberate them from farms, then we would need to re-strategize how we're actually doing this. So I appreciate you bringing up this topic. But yeah, as I say, I kind of wish I knew more on the economics, and I kind of wish I was way better with numbers than I actually am, because right now, I just don't think that we might come to a conclusion.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we have to learn. I mean, I'm constantly trying to look into various different topics. But yeah, I have one other big. Well, first of all, how much time do you have? I want to respect your time.
I could go for probably about half an hour longer.
Okay. So let's just do this next one real quick, and then we'll hop into the main one. So earlier we were just talking about the idea of a farm shutting down, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Let's imagine. Let's imagine a farm that's like a free-range farm of sorts. But let's say it's not just the label that we know they can get away with. Like, it's as free-range as you can possibly imagine. So it's not typical factory farm. Cows, chickens, whatever, are eating grass, roaming around. We can physically notice the difference between that and the atrocities that we see in something like Dominion. If you could snap your fingers and make that farm close down, would you do it?
Well, yeah, obviously, right? Unless you have some kind of... Well, let's hear your counterpoint.
So here's the thing. If, let's say, that farm is selling their products to a subset of people that want that product, is people that are convincing themselves that it's acceptable to eat animals if they're treated better, which it's not, of course, right? It's not, but it's better. It has to be better. So if you snap your fingers and that farm disappears, we could luck out, and hopefully all those customers of that farm would find another farm like it, put their free-range stuff in demand, and make them increase their volume. But if they do not do that, and us closing down that farm makes those same carnists go and eat factory farmed animals, even though it might seem in the broad scheme of things like, oh, who cares? They're carnists, they're doing horrible. We would be causing more harm and suffering and increasing the demand in factory farmed meat products by closing down that one. I would snap my fingers and close a factory farm one for sure, but not anything better. I would close down the worst, but anything that leans towards better than the worst, I would have to not do so, I think.
Yeah, I think I understand this argument that you're making a lot more. With regards to things like Dominion, I think we should make clear that the the animals you're seeing in that aren't just from factory farms. This is the so-called local farming. And the whole local farming BS, I mean, we both know it is a complete scam, a lie. And there's a lot that you don't see there. And I would actually say some of the worst murder footage and stuff that I've seen has come from these so-called local farms.
Gotcha. So yeah, within the hypothetical, it would have to be one that we can recognize is like, so I watched Dominion, the opening 20 minutes for a conversation I had recently, and they show like the mother pigs locked in their tiny cage. They show the runts get slammed down. They show like all these various different things where they don't get to touch grass at all. They don't get out. They don't, anyways. And, they just, they cut out the teeth, they cut off the tails, they do all this. So I'm just saying, if we imagine a farm that even if it's not great, the animals die at the end, they don't cut off tails, they don't cut out teeth, they don't lock them in this cage or whatever. They let them roam free and think they have this great life and they're going to get butchered eventually. But if closing down that farm with the pigs on grass, enjoying themselves more than the suffering we see in Dominion, I feel like we must not snap our fingers and close that farm down.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Now, I think in a vacuum, your argument works. I think if you really take all these rigidly take into account all these hypotheticals and stuff, and we analyze it from the super utilitarian perspective, it's like, yeah, okay, you shut down this farm, and now as a result of this, the carnists who were buying from that farm are going to buy these like objectively worse, in this hypothetical, products from another farm. And we can take away all these things in the hypothetical. So like we can take away, for example, my point about the murders being more horrific often at these local farms. And then we're just saying in this hypothetical, no, this farm definitely, like in each case, the murders are like, there is less suffering and blah, blah, blah. I can see in a vacuum why that argument would work. I think from wider societal implications, I don't see it as working in quite that same way.
Well, even if it wouldn't do something perfect, wouldn't you imagine that the factory farm I'm talking, or the free range farm I'm talking about, if you just close it down, just your finger snap, it closes down, those products being sold, someone out of all the people that bought those products, at least one of those people is going to support more factory farming than they would have. I don't know if the numbers would work perfectly, but even one less factory farmed pig to one of this farm, I mean, every little bit counts, I think.
I think there's other variables to take into account here, though, as well, which is why I think your analogy works well in this strict hypothetical. But for example, if the people buying from this farm, the reason they're buying from this farm is because they're concerned about welfare, then technically when this farm shuts down, they're not going to up their amount of factory farming.
No, that's a fair point. Hopefully they would just go and get other stuff from another company. But I really don't know how many companies there are. I don't know if it changes depending on a town's like health food store having local stuff. And so there are it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I think I would have to not close it down if I felt like it was amongst the 50% of farms that were the best. Whereas maybe if it's anywhere in the 50% are the worst. Well, honestly, factory farming is like over 90%. So it'd be any of the 90% that's the worst. I'd probably shut any of them down.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at this from like, so both farming animals is oppression, right? Regardless of how it's done. And so is like, I don't know, sex trafficking, regardless of how it's done. Now, we wouldn't say in the case of like some grotty pedophile ring, well, we don't want to shut down this pedophile ring because the suffering of these children, is actually not as bad as, these other pedophile rings. And if we shut this one down, it's customers who buy the films and stuff that come from this pedophile ring. they're just going to go elsewhere and these children might suffer more. Now, I can see if you madly apply all these little hypotheticals, put it in this vacuum, you could, of course, make this like kind of argument. It's like, well, actually, you know, in this world where we do this, you know, actually, we shouldn't shut this down or something. But the societal implications of not shutting this down would obviously be bad, and it does. You can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, I see where you're going, and in some of these hypotheticals, we'd have to see exact numbers, and therefore we are strictly talking hypothetical. I think with the farm thing, I think it seems clear that it must have some effect. But yeah, I think even with something disturbing like talking about like sex work type stuff, if you just have to look at the numbers. So if we have found out that since the invention of like internet porn and like OnlyFans type stuff, if since that sexual assaults on real humans has dropped because people, instead of going out and the R word I can't say on here, people, if instead of that they're just going on OnlyFans or whatever, then I would say if I could snap my fingers to shut down Andrew Tate and his brother having their OnlyFans operations, I wouldn't do that if the odds were that the people that would have watched those OnlyFans are just going to go out and do sexual assaults in real life or something like that. But we'd have to look at the numbers. But just because it sounds bad doesn't mean it is bad.
Yeah, I see you're looking at things from a strictly utilitarian standpoint here, I guess. But if the Tate brothers were trafficking women for whatever it was, I would still shut that down regardless of, you know, numbers or whatever was happening in society, because I think if there's something that's just an evil thing, that should be shut down. We shouldn't just say, well, shutting down this evil thing will allow more numbers of this to happen. We're trying to create a just world, right? Overall, we're trying to create a world with fewer rights violations. We're trying to create a world where it's conditioned into the psyche of people that these are all ultimately bad things. I don't think we should massively get caught up on, you know, calculations and figures of, you know, otherwise, if we look at it from this perspective, we can justify things like, you know, like, I don't know, the stuff that happened in World War II, because we have like radar now and penicillin. You know, I wouldn't say, for example, I wish that the Blitz, I'm glad that the Blitz did happen in London and all those people were bombed to smithereens, because we have radar now as a result, or something like that. And this has saved X many, I don't know, or penicillin, I think, came from World War II, and this has saved many lives. So whatever it was, I think there's a nasty story of how that came about. Maybe it was from like the concentration camps or something.
Well, let me cut you off real quick, because I am not a utilitarian in any sense of the word. If a train is going towards 5 people and I can make it hit 1 instead of the 5, I do not do it. If it's going towards 1 million, I don't do it. If it's going towards 10 cows, I don't switch it to get 1. I am not a utilitarian. I think the mix-up people have is people think there's a connection between welfarism and reducitarianism connected to utilitarianism, and it's not. Because here's the thing. Are you familiar with being like a deontologist, like being rule-based?
Yes, maybe that's what. So I'm not super versed in philosophy, but I think if I was, I think I'm probably a deontologist. I could be wrong, but I think I'm a deontologist.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. People in the vegan community right now are mixing up words. But even if I let some of that slide, the idea is, so a lot of people think a deontologist would say, I fight for animal liberation. I'm trying to get people to go vegan. Nothing else matters. If you're going for welfare or reducing, that's a utilitarian thing, because that's an overall calculus. And here's what they miss out on. Being a deontologist means, in a sense, means that you have rules. You have your guidelines, like you don't kill, which is why somebody wouldn't kill 1 person to save 5. And so you have this set idea of this is right or this is wrong, and therefore I am standing strong on it. But what they're missing out on is the same thing works for any negative rights violation, in the same sense that it should be illegal for somebody to punch you in the face. because they're harming you, that if it was legal to punch somebody in the face, we would want to make it illegal to punch them in the face, right? Because in the same sense that we wouldn't just say, I only want humans to be completely free or nothing. I don't want to give them all the individual things. So same things with the pigs. I might say, I want to work towards people like it being illegal to cut off the tails and teeth of pigs. And people consider that a utilitarian stance, but it's not. It's a deontologist stance of that's a rights violation to cut off their teeth. So if I can get the law, even though I want total liberation overall, until that happens, I want the law to say farmers can't cut their teeth and tails off. And so anyways, that's why that's deontology, because it's having this strict rule-based stance.
Mm-hmm. So what are you saying you are, if not a utilitarian?
I am 100% deontologist. Like most people are threshold deontologists, where they would say, I wouldn't kill one person to save 5, but if it got up to like 1 million or 100,000, I would kill one person to save 5. Like one innocent person. I wouldn't kill an innocent person for anything.
So
yeah.
I wish I was more versed in philosophy as well, but as I say, given the positions I've seen you make before, I'm surprised that you say you are a deontologist and not a utilitarian. I mean, even
I know what's in your brain right now, and I can tell you why.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. If somebody told me that they were going to kill either one person or 100 people or 5 people or whatever, and I had to choose who to save, I would say kill the 1, not the 5. That's because I am having to pick between these. If it's already in motion, which there's somebody in here that I know what he's thinking already, that he thinks it doesn't matter that it's in motion. But like if a plane is crashing and there's 1,000 people in there and that plane is going to crash and they're all going to die, and some God being thing tells me, if I shoot this random stranger here in the head and kill them, all 1,000 people will live.
Yeah.
I'll say no. I'm really sad that plane's crashing. That's part of what's happening in the world. I didn't cause that. And even if somebody else did, it's a bummer. And I think we should fight to make it to where people can't make planes crash. But that person doesn't deserve to die. And in my moral take on things, I won't kill that person. But if somebody tells me, I'm going to kill 1,001 people, and if you tell me right now, just kill 1 at random versus killing 1,000 at random, I'll do that. I'd say, yes, kill 1. Just kill 1. Don't, if you're going to kill all of them, kill 1. So with animals are suffering all over the world. If I tell somebody they should go vegan and they go, no, fuck you. And I'm like, can you at least cut down, do meatless Mondays? Because if you save 1 pig, that will make my heart happy. Because they're already going to die, not because I think it's acceptable to only save 1.
So I guess you're a deontologist, but a suffering-based deontologist? Or is that right? Or?
Yeah, I mean, my moral stance is it focuses on negative rights, which would be rights that can be removed from somebody. And so like you remove... like removing somebody's speech. I think everybody should have their free speech. Removing somebody's ability to live, to not be harmed, all these things. Where a positive right is giving something. If you like positive rights, then you want to give somebody health care. You think you want to afford them this extra right. My moral stance is, if something is sentient and it can feel, then you shouldn't make it feel bad. And so my deontologist stance would cover anything involving that. Animals, humans, whatever. You don't kick them. You don't harm them. You don't fence them in. Which is why I'm against owning pets. You leave them to themselves. And outside of that, we create different laws to be able to function well and find food and whatnot. But you don't kill and you don't harm and you don't enslave. And that it's just across the board for me, and I don't have wiggle room there. So,
because there's all these like crazy ass head fucks you can do with the whole deontology, utilitarian stuff. Like there's the whole, even from an animal rights activist standpoint, it's like, would you flip the switch to like prevent 9/11 if it turns out that 9/11, stopped however many hundreds of thousands of animals being bred into existence to be murdered by the people on the planes, or there's these crazy, horrible things that little thought experiments that you can come up with that are just like so horrible to think about, because it really makes you, it's really hard to give concrete answers on a lot of these things.
Well, I think a lot of utilitarians, they are utilitarian because they accept what is the moral right answer, not because they would follow through with it. You could say that morally it would be better for 9/11 to happen than this other thing, that you basically give the same amount of units of suffering and end of life that happens to be a little worse. And the idea is just, are you willing to acknowledge that it's worse? But in a sense, it doesn't matter. It's fascinating to help you figure out how you feel about something, but yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so if you got time, I do have one last thing I want to go over with you. Okay,
let's go.
I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this. Okay, okay, so I go into the woods. It's not really me. I'm just using me as the hypothetical. I go into the woods. I have a gun. I've eaten all the food I need to eat. I am the fullest person that can be. I've overeaten this day. Okay. And for the rest of my life, we know I'm good on food. I don't need any food. I have all the food at my house, and I'm never going to run out, and I can magically know this, okay? I go into the woods, and I see a tree with an apple on it. Okay? There's an apple on this tree. I don't need this apple. I have all the apples at home. A deer is walking up, and I'm there, and a deer's there. We're out in nature. A deer's about to eat that apple. I pull my gun out. I shoot that deer. I kill that deer to stop them from getting the apple. I don't want to eat deer. And I go and I eat the apple. Am I a vegan? Did I do an action that makes one not vegan?
Yeah, I would say that would mean you weren't a vegan. Yeah, you murdered an animal so you could eat an apple.
Okay. And so this is interesting. I'm glad I worded it this way before we started talking about crop deaths, because when I start talking about crop deaths first and then I say it, depending on which vegan I'm talking to, they'll go, oh, well, it's not vegan related. It's just immoral or something. But so here's the problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, you have to do what you have to do to survive. So even though crop deaths exist, I'm going to continue to I'm going to eat all the crops today. But here's the interesting thing, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this. I didn't need that apple. And even though I viewed that as a thing I wanted to consume, and I killed something for it, I would compare that to something like, I think it's reasonable for us humans to spray pesticides and do rodenticides, do whatever we need to do to kill rodents and birds or whatever for our food, because we need that food, so we're protecting our food. But not if we don't need the food. So if we eat all the food and we're good to go, but then we eat something that we know, in the same sense that we can tell people the studies are in, you can be vegan and thrive. We also know that every diet, it doesn't matter if it's whole food, if it's carnivore, if it's paleo, keto, Mediterranean, all these diets, every professional in the world will say the same thing. Processed junk food, cakes, cookies, ice creams, all these things are unhealthy. They are not improving our health whatsoever. Mm-hmm. If we eat something like vegan ice cream or vegan cake or whatever, I think it's interesting and worth looking at. I don't think everybody is like not vegan if they eat it. But if there were rodents and insects, and then because of birds eating those insects that died from crop deaths, and we're consuming something that's not for our health, I think it must be somewhat comparable to shooting the deer that's about to eat the apple. And we should knock it off.
I see what you mean. Because are you talking now? I guess you're not talking here about products that we should be eating to get by, to survive, in which there's always going to be like a certain amount of harm caused for civilization. But you're saying
Correct.
like for these products we eat just for like pleasure, like donuts and stuff like that, we're causing harm ultimately for pleasure. The problem is
purely for taste pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the problem is with this, where would this philosophy kind of end? Because every single little thing you do in life for pleasure is probably going to have some form of harm involved in this non-harm-free world. I mean, you wouldn't be able to play a video game anymore because it uses electricity. You wouldn't be able to buy a battery. I know, I can see exactly what you're saying, but I still think there is when you're literally there murdering someone right in front of you, I see that as a very different thing from just like funding a system in this fucked up world that is harm-free, that is not harm-free. I see buying the vegan donut as the same as playing a video game and causing harm via electricity.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to the video game store, and there's one last video game on the shelf, and I don't know, and a rat is about to like chew the video game cartridge or something, and I shoot the rat. Yeah, that would be a very bad action. But I don't think me playing the video game at home and then this electricity causes harm to like animals and the environment. I see them as kind of different things. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is different. At very least, it seems different. I don't know exactly how different it is, but yeah. So here's one that's hard for me to get around. It's the idea that like I think it's fine to cut down a tree to build shelter, even if that tree would have had like birds and squirrels living in it, because we're all doing what we need to do to survive. But the reason we're vegan is because we recognize the things we don't need. We don't need the taste pleasure of meat. So we're not going to cause this suffering to something we don't need. And so it's all on a spectrum. So deciding like, am I going to build this giant house that I don't need this big of a house for one person? Is this reasonable to do as a vegan? So it's kind of like that. And I don't think we should be micromanaging every action we do. You go to buy a coffee at the store when you could have sent that money to some starving child in Africa or something. We can't do everything. But when people on the street, and I'm sure you get this all the time with the street activism, that when people say, oh, there's all these other problems in the world, and I'm guessing your reaction is something like, well, this is something that we can easily do. We can easily just cut this out and protect all these animals where other things are complicated. And so I would say now overeating is kind of complicated, but something like knowing something for sure is unhealthy, like a vegan donut must be unhealthy. So not doing that, I think, is somewhat reasonable. Being 100 pounds overweight means that you must be doing something wrong. You must be causing more rodent death from rodenticides. So that person, as a vegan, I think should try to not be overweight for various different reasons. It's probably good for veganism to be a healthy weight. But also separately just from the actions that you're causing. But yeah, I don't know the exact point to say that there's an issue, but I would say that if you went into a store and there was a bin full of apples and another bin full of apples, and one sign said these apples were grown in a way where no harm came to any animal, and then the other one said 832 flies died from insecticides, 52 rats, and it had a whole list. And it's like, you can buy whichever apples you want. If they were the same cost, must it not be vegan to buy the ones that cause no harm? If you have the option?
Yeah, I think when you take, we have the option of causing less harm, whatever into equation. Yeah, it would be silly to not buy the one that causes like less harm in some way. But one distinction as well I'd like to make is I still think there's a huge distinction between harm and oppression, which is why I think vegans are so different from carnists in this regard. Because when you go vegan, it's not that you no longer harm animals. I mean, you harm far, far, far fewer than you would obviously if you were a non-vegan. But it's that you no longer oppress them. It's impossible to go through this world harm-free. You just can't do it.
Definitely.
So this is what, for me, I think veganism is. For me, veganism is about actually avoiding oppressing animals, enslaving them, using them as resources here for humans. harm is important. You know, I'm not going to completely, you know, I see a lot of vegans make kind of like almost dogmatic statements as if like harm or suffering just isn't factored in at all, as if we just shouldn't at all care about harm and suffering. Of course, harm and suffering is important, but ultimately you can't go through this world without causing harm. So I think we should still massively distinguish harm from oppression and the level of intent to the harm as well. I mean, even our legal system, which is screwed up in many ways in many countries, sees the difference between manslaughter and murder. So with the deer analogy you were making, like that would just be a murder in my opinion. But I think buying a fucking a kiwi fruit or a lime from the shop, if that was bad and it killed animals, I think it would be manslaughter and not murder. And even that we're doing, it's like we're doing it through the Carnist system as well. Obviously, we want veganism as well. Part of veganism is we actually want to create a vegan world. Veganic farming, vertical farming, without pesticide use, without the violent thing. If vegans ran the world, all violent crop farming methods would be banned unless it was like extremely impracticable.
No, you're completely right. And I think that's why we need to work towards getting these good innovations, work towards better things. But until we have them, there still are things that I think we need to look at in terms of what's right and wrong. When I was talking to Vegan Gains and we were talking about the rodenticide thing, because I think it's a fascinating thing to look at. You put rodenticide, a chemical that will attract rats to eat the rodenticide to die. They suffer, bleed out from the inside. They die this horrible, painful death so they won't harm our crops. And Vegan Gains and your average vegan will say, oh, well, they were committing a rights violation to the crop owner. Like they went to do this thing, so you can do this thing. And so that is practically identical to shooting the deer. The rat was going to go consume something, which is why I come up with the deer analogy. The rat wants to go and eat wheat or corn or whatever. And the deer wants to eat the apple, and the human wants to kill the deer to eat the apple, kill the rat to get the corn. And both are fine. Killing that deer is fine if you need the apple. That's why I specified the not needing it. So I just think it's worth thinking about every vegan donut that causes, not only doesn't cause health to a human, but it causes harm to the human's health, that there is likely at very least one death. And now we also have to figure out how much do we care about insects. I don't care anywhere near as much. They're sentient. I wouldn't kill one intentionally, but I might pay for one to be killed depending on which produce I'm buying. But I don't feel comfortable having something like a donut, knowing that I'm killing insects and maybe rodents for it. If I were to do it, it would be based on my addiction to the donut.
The thing with insects is, while we do grant them moral consideration as vegans, hence we don't eat honey and stuff or eat carmine, whatever. Insects are just the most impractical creatures possible to avoid. And I think you can do a name the trait kind of thing. I mean, me buying these fucking headphones probably caused insects. Me living in this house, me walking home today from the shop probably killed insects. I probably stood on insects. Insects are important enough to not exploit, but they're not so important as to basically live your entire existence around avoiding harming. You have to. I mean, maybe I'm being speciesist there by saying that. Maybe they are important as that. But
you should be speciesist,
right? Well, yeah, I see what you're saying, because there are sentience hierarchies and stuff, right? So maybe like we are all speciesist to a certain extent, but basically, if we have a world where we literally can't do anything for fear of like harming insects, we can't have civilization at all. We can't walk anywhere. We can't drive anywhere. We can't have houses. And yeah, as I say, you can trait equalize insects and humans here. You could just say, like, if Carson was 1 millimeter long, he couldn't be moved out the way. I couldn't like communicate with him. And like, should there be laws against like, building this house where Carson might be and a brick might crush him to death? And like, it would be absurd, I think, to have the law against killing the 1 millimeter long Carson. in that circumstance. But I've got to tell you, I've just found some hilarious carnists here in the comments section. You've got some funny ones here. Here's one from VL Now who says, do you know who this troll is? VL Now.
I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
He says, taste pleasure is a ridiculous vegan term. Do you drink water for taste pleasure? No, you do it because you need it. So I think he's comparing bacon there to water, which is pretty hilarious. And then Garuda Legends says, I need the nutrients in meat. The taste is just a bonus. Yeah, I'm sure, Garuda Legends, that is exactly why you eat bacon, frazzles. You need the nutrients in them. You don't do it for taste pleasure at all.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar with both these guys, and especially VL Now is very for non-vegan, has some very good, interesting points that I see in comments here and there. But I strongly disagree with that comment that you just read because because that's a thing. It's like taste pleasure is a thing. It exists if you eat something that you know is unhealthy. So that you're doing it for taste. You're doing it because you're essentially addicted to it. It just is what it is. What it is. Yeah.
Carson, I've got to go soon, but did you want to ask the Predators question quick?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. I think it was Angelo was asking me to ask your thoughts on predator culling. So yeah, what are your thoughts on predator culling?
Yeah, so this is an argument that has been brought up in the vegan community really after I think Dr. Avi, he kind of brought it to light in like the Discord communities and stuff, and now it's now we have the question of should vegans or should we just not as a society kill predators to reduce rights violations in nature, the suffering it causes? Now here's the thing, and I said this on Has Vegan stream recently because he asked me the same question. If you do the whole name the trait thing with the xenomorph and the lion, I can't name the trait, right? I've been bitten. I completely agree that is logically sound and there's an inconsistency. So, George, would you shoot a xenomorph who is going around murdering humans and they need to do it to survive and it even benefits the ecosystem that they eat these humans? Yes, I would shoot that xenomorph. George, would you shoot a lion because they're doing the exact same thing to gazelles, deers? No, I wouldn't. Okay, name the trait. Boom, you got me. I can't name it, right? I completely understand there's an inconsistency there. My only counter arguments to this is... I think it also leads to reductios the other way. So you can do it the other way and you get massive reductios there as well. For example, Vegan Gains, he said, when I first made my video just about this idea of killing predators, I mentioned some crazy reductios you'd have in it. Like, let's say hypothetically you have a toddler who we have a crystal ball and we know will never be vegan for the rest of their life. Would you shoot that toddler in the head? Vegan Gains is like, yeah, sure, shoot the toddler. That for me is a reductio, right? So it works the other way and it leads to the same thing as name the trait does. When you do NTT on a carnist, they'll end up saying they will Holocaust the mentally disabled. I can't see how this predator culling thing wouldn't also lead to a holocausting of a certain group. You could just say, like, let's say the Jews had this gene where they had to consume animals. Like, would you just round up and kill the Jews? And you could they could keep doing the traits and say, oh, only if they had like the sentience of a deer and stuff. And again, you just get to the whole, you'd holocaust the mentally disabled. So the reductio, I think, works the other way. And then the other reason, my only other counter argument is that I don't think this is a good look for like the animal rights movement. And carnists are getting on our side about quite a lot of stuff, including in the UK, the whole fox hunting bill, right? About, we want to keep the ban on fox hunting. And many carnists agree this is a bad thing. And this is leading to greater concern for animals because you can actually help draw distinctions. What kind of a world are we going to be creating where it's like we go around murdering like non-herbivorous animals? This is leading to stuff like you'd have to be talking about shooting little seals and everything. What kind of fucked up society are we like creating there?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on almost everything you said, especially that it's a bad look. Which is why, I don't know, I don't want to give it up as something that I talk about philosophically with friends, fellow vegans and whatnot. But I definitely would never want it to be like if I was doing street activism And I was talking to somebody and they said, well, what do you think about killing lions or whatever? I'm like, oh, I mean, we don't need to talk about that. I would come up with a way to say like, that's the least of my worries. That has nothing to like this is something we can handle. Like that's, yeah.
It's just out of our control. It's like I'm controlling like the demand of animal foods and stuff each day, and I'm doing activism against that. I do see the whole killing lions thing as an ultimately fruitless thing. I completely understand the logic.
Can I challenge you on it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you're in a tree. Let's say it's a tree that has a tree fort, so you don't have to balance. Okay, so you're in a tree with a tree fort, and you're in Africa, and you have a gun. You have a sniper rifle, and you know how to use it. You can use it well. So a lion's going to get a zebra, and we already know your stance. You're going to let it get the zebra because that's nature. It's doing its thing. Here's the twist. Lion gets a zebra. Eats the shit out of it. It's so eaten. Lion's not hungry anymore. It needs no more food. Now, this is going to be a rare lion that happens to be born with some mental issues, and it doesn't do what normal lions do, which it chillaxes. It goes up to another zebra and starts maybe torturing it, maybe just kills it. Let's just say it kills it. Let's leave out the torture variable. It kills it and just leaves it there. And let's say we know no other lions are going to come eat it. And then it goes up to another one and kills it. And we can even add in, just for the sake of argument, that this is unheard of. Like that lions don't naturally do this. This lion is just an asshole. It's not hungry. It needs no food and it kills. Would you take out that individual lion?
So here's the thing. I think I have a consistent and inconsistent answer to this kind of thing, because I would actually, I don't know if many people know my position on this. I would actually use whatever force was possible to stop an animal from attacking another animal. So even if a lion was attacking a zebra to eat the zebra, I think it would be ethical in that case to shoot the zebra to shoot the lion, to stop the lion from shooting the zebra. And that's actually always been my position since I've been vegan. Now, here's why it's kind of consistent as well with my stance on humans, right? But it's inconsistent. I'm inconsistent here, should I just add, because I wouldn't shoot a lion just roaming around. I'm only shooting a lion once they're doing the attack. Now, here's where I'm inconsistent there, but here's where I am consistent. If I saw a slaughterhouse worker just walking around the street, I wouldn't murder the slaughterhouse worker. Mm-hmm. But if an ALF activist broke into a slaughterhouse and put the gun to the slaughterman's head as they're about to stab a pig to death and says,
let's end it here, George. Let's end it here.
No, right. Go on. It said, you drop the knife now or I'm going to shoot. And the slaughterhouse worker says, no, fuck you, I'm going to kill the pig. Yeah, I would support shooting the slaughterhouse worker. So it's like, I would, it depends if if they're actually doing the act or not.
Would you want the law to stay consistent and you would just cross your fingers and hope they get away? But if they got caught, would you hope the law holds them accountable because laws are important?
Yeah, that's something I haven't even thought about. As in, like, so say an activist actually did that, should they be done for murder?
Yeah.
From an emotional standpoint, I wouldn't want that activist to be prosecuted because I see them as preventing a murder. I see them as ultimately as someone doing a good thing in that regard. Do I think there should be... we need some kind of strong law from a logical perspective just to prevent murder from any kind of subjective cases such as like my own. I mean, I guess it's something I haven't, what should happen to that activist who does that? I guess if George ruled the world, like nothing would happen to that activist, but I can see why societally you'd probably need.
How old were you when you turned vegan?
I was 23.
Okay. Let's say the activist is 22. Or sorry, not the activist. The slaughterhouse worker is 22.
Yeah, if the slaughterhouse worker is refusing to drop the knife,
Okay,
I
because it's
don't
the
see.
action taking place. Interesting.
Yeah, the guy's about to murder an innocent being. Like, just use what. Like, if a SWAT team, like, if a guy's holding a knife to a child's throat and the police sniper says drop the fucking
Yeah.
knife, and he says no, and you just start sawing the child's neck, you're going to want him to pull the
Yeah.
trigger. I apply the same to a pig. I also apply the same to a zebra.
Okay.
And that'll shoot the lion. But where I'm inconsistent is that I wouldn't shoot a lion walking around, and I wouldn't shoot a slaughterhouse worker just walking down the street.
But would you not advocate for there being patrolmen that are out shooting lions only before they eat their prey? Because I think that's the ultimate idea of predator culling isn't necessarily just take them out because they're predators.
And this is and this is I guess another reason I don't support the predator culling position. It just leads to these crazy reductios in the human world. Do I want like a patrol just going around the street saying, "Are you vegan?" No. So it's
right.
So I don't want that either, because otherwise my whole family's about to get murdered. So
oof, yeah. Oh, George, I have to ask you this question. Now, in your defense, you're not the only one getting a wild question like this. My buddy Michael had to admit that he would sacrifice his wife to save 10 million chickens, I think it was. Okay, so your family, let's say a family member, a close one, we don't have to specify, is about to, they're a slaughterhouse worker, they're about to kill a cow, let's say a chicken. Yeah. They're about to kill a chicken, and then an activist is there going to kill your family member. Mm-hmm. Would you stop that activist?
Yeah, I would, from an emotional standpoint, I guess. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, my dad, who I love very much, he fishes, but like if he was about to like, hook a fish out of the water and an activist was about to shoot my dad, I'd stop that activist.
Okay.
Here's the thing. It just leads to like, there's so many with this whole killing predators thing. It opens up a whole fucking can of worms, doesn't it? Of consistencies and inconsistencies.
But it's good. It's good to think about it because then you go, oh man, I would do this. I wouldn't do this. It's really important for us humans that can have a huge effect on the world to figure out how we feel and why we feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely see the merit in this in some ways, and then in other ways it's like, damn, I wish these questions didn't fucking exist. I think put it this way,
especially if your dad's gonna watch the stream,
right?
All right, no. He heard that no matter how vegan you are, you're gonna protect him. Your dad should totally watch the stream.
Maybe he should. Yeah. Not that I want him to get the idea that fishing is good, because he knows I don't. I stopped fishing with him as soon as I went vegan. I said, Dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm vegan. Yeah. But yeah, look, the whole killing predators debate, I completely see the merit in it, in the amount of suffering it would stop. I just think it opens a whole can of worms, and I think the vegan movement is better off without this whole killing predators debate than it is with it. I can't see this doing as much more than actually causing problems. I don't think that something good ultimately is going to come from this.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's only a good that can come in the future. Like it's something where if we had a vegan world and the future was trying to figure out, okay, what problems do we need to work on? And there'll be all kinds of stuff with like lab grown meat that you can make look like a zebra to put out in the wild for a lion to eat lab grown meat or something. But anyways, I better let you get going because I think it's pretty late where you're at right now.
Yes, cheers, man. I haven't even eaten dinner yet, so I got to cook. So
I'm gonna stick around and chat with chat, but I'll put up a separate video of just what we did. That way, if you're up for sharing it around and whatnot, that'll be cool. But
yeah, thank you for having this discussion, Carson. I appreciate you putting my brain to work on a lot of these things. Thanks, man. I wish I'd eaten before the stream so my brain could have been a bit more fueled for the maths and stuff. But no, it's good chat. Cheers, Dad.
Yeah,
dude.
For sure. All right. Take care. See you.
Thanks, man.
All right, Jeremy, you're still there. I'm going to put this right here. Jeremy, if you guys like to hop on, I didn't get a chance to read all your comments at the beginning, but I got the vibe that you were disagreeing with my stance on liberating animals from factory farms. if I heard you right, please hop in here and convince me how I missed something. If you don't have a chance to talk, that's cool too. And Akash, I don't know if you're still there, um, I wasn't sure if you also were disagreeing with that stance. And yeah, let's see, Jeremy. You want me to explain decades of medical science? And... Sure, got time. Oh, wait, what? Medical science? What are you talking about? Okay, I think Jeremy's going to hop in here in a sec. Bup, bup, bup. I don't know if you saw, but I put the links already there. And Michael, if you're still watching, I got confirmation from Garland. So we are on for tomorrow. We'll be talking crop deaths. I think everybody and their kitchen sinks is needing me, you, and Garland to specifically have all focus on crop deaths. And so, yeah, that's tomorrow, 10 a.m. PST. So it'll be noon for both you and Garland. And it's official, so I need to make a thing for it. So hopefully you're still good to go on that too. Jeremy, let's see. Jeremy, you are hopping in here, or were you talking to somebody else? Let's see. Copy we find. Okay, Akash, yeah, you're in there. Okay. Also, tomorrow, 8 a.m. PST, I'll be talking to Akash, and we're going to be doing something different. We'll be talking about abortion. So abortion's always fun. All right, Jeremy, how's it going? Oh, no sound. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm doing good.
Awesome.
Hi.
Awesome. Okay. Where did I go wrong if I went wrong on the supply and demand?
Did you see my comment about how this seems like two ancient Greek philosophers trying to recreate a whole science from scratch?
I
think you guys are kind of talking about economics 101, and I'm not an economist, but I took a couple of classes a long time ago, and I kind of follow some blogs.
It must be something like that, though, right? When I talked about the 10 cows in my backyard, and I'm supplying that to 10 people, one stolen, 11 were bred that year. Do you feel like I missed something, or factory farms would work different than I'm assuming?
So, I mean, obviously with like government subsidy interference and legal system, stuff can deviate from the way that supply and demand normally work, but you know what a supply and demand curve look like, right? What the basic model looks like. So you got the X and the Y axis, and the X axis is price, and the Y axis is amount produced, amount sold, or whatever. And the supply curve looks like the higher the price is, the more they're going to supply. So the supply curve goes up, it increases, right? It increases along the y-axis as it increases along the x-axis. It's an increasing function, and the demand curve is the opposite. The higher the price gets, the smaller quantity is going to be demanded at that price, right? And then they intersect, and that defines the optimal price point and the optimal amount that's going to be produced. That's the basic model. And so just on the basic model, you guys are kind of talking about the demand for these farm animals remaining the same when somebody liberates animals, which would be true.
Okay.
The people demanding it would remain the same, but then you're just kind of talking as if you can assume that, well, the suppliers will just breed more animals and just make up the difference because the demand will remain the same. Well, that's only looking at demand as if demand entirely determines the amount produced, but it's the intersection of supply and demand. Yeah. And when something is stolen from producers, or when their equipment is damaged, or there's a tax imposed upon them, or there's a regulation that makes them have to use a more expensive means of production, or anything like that. When the minimum wage goes up and they have to pay their workers more, all of that stuff is affecting the supply curve.
Yeah.
And liberating animals from a factory farm, you know, in theory, aside from like government bailouts and whatever else, in theory, that sort of thing is affecting the supply curve. It's shifting the supply curve down, because it's making it's making the amount that they can supply at a certain cost to themselves be lower.
Yeah.
You know, if they want to produce the same amount, breed the same amount of animals they did before, it's going to have to come at a higher cost to them, a higher.
But wouldn't they do it as
sacrifice.
long as they are still making a profit that would be worth it? I mean, I know I'm putting the answer in there by calling it worth it, but that must be the answer, right?
Well, a normal supply and demand curve, if you'd have to kind of draw this out and show what would happen when you shift the supply curve down, but the answer is some of it. You know, the answer is that if vegan animal liberation activists, liberate 1,000 chickens, then the supply curve is going to be shifted down, and it's not going to mean that there's going to be 1,000 less chickens produced, but it also doesn't mean that they're going to immediately produce exactly 1,000 chickens to get to exactly where they were before. What the basic economic model predicts is that there's going to be some point in between when the supply curve is shifted down, where, you know, they suffer the loss and they'll breed some more chickens, but the economic incentive won't be to breed exactly the number of chickens that were liberated. It would be some point in between.
Yeah,
that would be the new optimal.
Well, and that's why I was saying there would be a certain level of success, which probably has never existed, of harming a farm so well and getting away with it, or even not getting away with it, that makes the farm shut down, and that would be the only way I would see a benefit. I mean, there would be a slight benefit of costs going up. I don't know if costs would go up necessarily at a store because of that.
I mean, I think I understand this enough to like pass the test in an undergraduate class, what I just explained here. But I think instead of just trying to recreate the wheel, I think you guys should try to get somebody with actual economics expertise and also somebody,
or at least like at a farm, see what they would do.
Well, yeah, I guess there's that, but
because I'm guessing, so if you need to have 1,000 chickens at the end of the year, and if you have a farm and then the farm recognizes on average, like, oh, last year 8 chickens died of disease, and the year before that it was 12, and they figure out averages and all this stuff, then they're going to factor that into, okay, we're going to have 1,050 to counteract these diseases. Now, you could put any factors in. If chickens knew how to fly higher, it could be all like anywhere from 5 to 15 fly away a year.
All of that
if they had their goal,
that would push the supply curve down.
It would push the supply curve down, but there would still be the amount of demand. So there would be the dollar amount. No, it's not
fixed. It's not fixed. No, the demand curve is the demand curve. There's not a fixed number that is the demand. Demand is a curve that's sensitive to price. And
I see what you're saying.
The optimal price is going to also involve the supply curve. When the supply curve goes down, it means that, you know, the optimal price would be changed.
Okay.
You know, so demand is not a constant. Demand is a curve. Yeah. So if there's a whole bunch of things that make the production much more expensive, much more difficult for the suppliers, then the kind of the price that they need to charge is going to keep going up, right?
Gotcha.
The price that they're going to need to charge to meet to sell any specific amount, and so that's going to create a different and lower number a lower number of where, not the constant demand, because no such thing exists, but the place where the supply and the demand intersect, the place where the incentives of the suppliers and the incentives of the consumers, where those curves intersect, is the amount, that the optimal amount for them to produce and at a certain, and sell at a certain price. And all of those things, all of those kind of things, whether it's, you know, whether it's human intervention like liberating animals, or it's a disease that hits, or it's, like you said, just the animals, it's harder to keep them from escaping, or whatever else. Anything like taxes on their production, you know, anything like an increase in the cost of the machinery that they need, or anything like that. All of that is shifting the supply curve in a way that's going to make, theoretically, it's going to make the production go down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So,
but you need somebody. You need somebody with way more expertise than me.
Yeah. I think you're right that we need to look into it to see what would happen, what does happen. But would you guess, just off the top of your head, if anywhere from like 100 to 1,000, let's say 1,000, all over the world, all the different countries, 1,000 animals were just stolen liberated from factory farms by vegans. Would you guess that a reasonable amount of random saved animals like that would be more likely to just cause the number of how many are bred to go up, whereas the number of stolen would have to be so much higher to have any effect on cost at a store?
Well, I think both. I think the prediction of something like that reduces the supply, like liberating the supply, or if it wasn't sentient beings, we call it stealing the supply. I think the prediction is that part of the change of that lowered supply curve, part of that change is going to be in the overall amount sold being reduced part of the way, and then another part is going to be in increased prices. So both, if you just picture, like, because again, price is on the x-axis and quantity is on the y-axis. If you picture these curves like this, okay, here's like, so we're gonna say like, here's the origin over here, right, on down here, and so here's the supply curve going up, increasing, and here's the demand curve decreasing, and then and then you take the supply curve and you shift it down like this. I shift it down like this. The place where they cross is gonna both shift to the right and also down.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and part of it will depend on their profits as well.
So
if your profit margins are insane, then the supply shift might not affect the demand shift.
Yeah, there's different, I mean, what's called the elasticity, right? There's very different things for different products. And then it's not simple in the real world because there's all sorts of bailouts and subsidies given our politics, you know, in the US.
Okay, so
many other countries with all the major products supporting the animal torture industries. But
if a vegan friend of yours or an acquaintance, and you giving your thought on this would not affect you, you wouldn't get in trouble at all. If they said, hey, I'm thinking about going and stealing an animal from a factory farm, and I happen to know that if I did it, I would get away with it. Jeremy, should I do this? Do you approve of me doing this?
Yes, I do. And, you know, but the real main reason why I think I clearly support it, I support open liberation, even more than secret liberation.
Okay.
Because I think one of the best means we have is what the open liberation people do is they allow themselves to be caught and they're prepared to go to trial, and in which all kind of discovery of the reality of factory farms has to be shown it has to be shown to the jury, and it even like the lawyers and the judge and everybody else involved, that the police have to become aware of all of this stuff that normally the industry wants to keep secret. So I think essentially putting the basic morality of society on trial, like they do, is very important. And also, so just in terms of the animals themselves, like I said, I think the economic prediction is that if you liberate 1,000 animals, the company would produce somewhat less than 1,000 and slightly increase the price to compensate. That's what the basic model says. So if you think that the liberated animals in a sanctuary still have net negative lives, and you think liberating them makes their life less bad, but it's still not a good life, and the only thing you're doing about it is like reducing their overall pain. I don't know how many people think that, but if you did think that, then you would think, well, I still have all these negative lives in these rescued animals, and then the company will breed some increased number of animals to compensate, not the same amount, but something in between. Well, then there's going to be more animals in the world. So if you just think kind of life is all suffering, then you are like a strong antinatalist, then I think you would be causing more suffering beings to exist. But if you think, on the other hand, that the rescued animals in a good sanctuary have really positive lives there, then you could make the calculation that you're doing net good, even though the company will breed some increased number of animals as the result of the liberated animals. So it's not the simplest thing in the world in terms of that, but in terms of open liberation and what it does to get the message out, I gotta think that kind of consequence is so positive for the vegan message. And just to see that there are people who have this kind of strong ethical belief system, so strong that they're willing to risk jail for it, and then they're credibly able to make the analogy to people going to jail for racial civil rights and suffragettes being beaten and going to jail, and slavery abolitionists. I think I think those people are absolutely central to the movement.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't lean that way personally, but if it existed, then the numbers could show me, and it'd be interesting to see into the future how that's affected. No, definitely. Thanks for sharing those thoughts. One last thing before I hop off here. Hopefully this isn't too out of left field for anybody listening, but I'm 4 hours into the drunk stream of you and Jerem.
Okay.
And I was curious, your hypothetical about the so you have a set of children that break their arm, and then you have a set of children that break their arm, but they're wimpy. And so they have more suffering because it's emotional suffering based off their wimpiness. When I was thinking that through, my question I had for you is I wanted to know if the wimpy ones, are we in the hypothetical assuming that they will not learn from their actions whatsoever?
Oh yeah, I think I kind of implicitly am in my thought experiment, but then I give sort of I spin off from that to say that I'm worried about incentivizing people to make themselves wimpier in an attempt to hijack the consequentialists to give them what they want, and so I guess that's just the opposite, right? If you're saying that, if you don't coddle the kids who are wimpy about breaking their arm, and you treat their broken arm exactly the same way you treat any other kid's broken arm, and you care about all the broken arms equally instead of caring about all the suffering equally, then then in the real world, maybe like a lot of the wimpy kids will learn that wimpiness doesn't pay off, and they might as well not maximize their suffering. They might as well try to find tools to minimize their suffering.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, I think
and then
it
the
all
opposite of that is if we're gonna say the only thing that we're trying to do is maximize pleasure and minimize pain, then we are incentivizing people to try to get what they want by showing that they feel way more pain than anybody else when they don't get what they want.
Yeah. Well, and I think we, in a sense, to figure out exactly how we feel, we might want to remove that ability to do that. We would just have to know, is this suffering happening in a way that can't be changed? Because that changes everything, I think. And the analogy I came up with would be something like, let's say you have two children that you need to take care of in some form, but the amount of food you have is not the amount they need. And let's say one of those children was born in a way where they need to consume approximately 2,000 calories a day to maintain health. But the other person has this wild metabolism, but they were just born with it. It's not a feeling or anything, where they need 4,000 calories. And let's say you only had 2,000 calories. I think similar to your case with the broken arm, it wouldn't just be that you give each of them 1,000 if neither of them did anything wrong. Neither of them deserve preference over the other. And so you would just do the math to make sure that they are getting the exact same percentage for what they need.
I mean, that's the example that I gave that was related to pain is, if you're told as a teacher or whatever that some kid had a neurological condition where if they broke their arm, it would send way more pain signals to their brain. And you had that kind of like medical, like physical explanation. You would tend to think that you should pay a lot more attention to that kid to make sure they don't break their arm. But when it's something that's more in the personality, something that we would call wimpy, the same amount of pain signals are being sent from the arm to the brain, but then inside the brain, the kid's personality is like producing a lot more psychological distress. Then it doesn't seem like we should. That's kind of similar to your example. It's like the feelings of hunger and the suffering they're not different because the kids have different personalities, and one of them is just a bigger wimp when they're hungry. It's due to something in their metabolism that sort of happens before they get to the point of experiencing the hunger. Yeah, it does. Okay, that is a real tricky area for ethical consequentialism, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think it works with something direct like the diet because it's numbers, where I do see a concern with the way you just described that you would put more focus on prevention for the ones that will suffer more. Because imagine this. Imagine if you had 100 kids.
Oh, I said that I wouldn't when it's wimpiness. I said that I probably would when it's some kind of nerve.
When it's
disorder.
the nerve thing, yeah. So let's say you have 100 kids that do not have the nerve disorder, and 100 that do have the nerve disorder. And let's say if you did not intervene in any way, 5 from each of the groups is going to break an arm. And then the 5 from the nerve disorder one, they're going to feel more suffering, right? Okay, so we know this information. Now let's say we take the same hundreds without it having happened, and now because you know the likelihood of the suffering being higher with this group, if you put more effort towards that group not getting broken arms because you know that they're the utility calculation, and then at the end of the year you end up having, because you probably gave some support to the other group as well, but less. So let's say at the end of the year you have 3 from the group without the nerve disorder gets a broken arm, and only 1 from the group with the nerve disorder that got a broken arm. I would say even though the utility calculation of the amount of suffering that took place is less than it would have been if you would have focused equally on both, the the actions you did of attending to children led likely to individuals on this side getting a broken arm that wouldn't have because you cared more about this side. And I think that is a problem.
So you're measuring like relative harm or benefit by each individual separately?
Just in the sense of like prevention, I think is a wildly different, like, so if you give the calories to somebody, it's exact numbers. But if I have two kids and I'm focusing on protecting one because they are more likely to be harmed than the other, but because of that focus, the other one gets harmed. I think there is a concern there.
You're saying that's a wrong based upon that individual because that decreased that one individual's well-being.
Yeah, I think they should all get equal. Yeah, I think they should all get equal. And then if you had 2 on this side had it, and then 2 on this side had it, it will be 4 instead of 3 and 1. It will be higher suffering, but I think you will have done a more moral act by equal across the board.
So the kind of things I think you probably heard me mention several times, the kind of things in society that I mention when I say that I don't want deontologists to be in charge of anything important. Like setting the speed limit or the trade-offs for energy policy and energy production versus environmental impact and safety
like
and drug
doctors,
testing.
If 2 people come in from a car wreck and the one that's closer to dying has a swastika tattoo, you have to do what you have to do. You don't go, okay, we're going to help this other person because they're probably the better person. You help the person based on this is what we do. So it's sort of like the speed limit thing. You don't cut the speed limit down to 5 miles an hour so you can have less wrecks. We have to have reasonable outcomes. I feel you on that. Yeah.
In civilian
does that
medicine,
fit in? Does the doctor one fit in?
In civilian medicine, I think they don't. I can understand why you don't want kind of political ideology to get involved in making a decision, but I think they do make that kind of decision when there's like a mass casualty event. In terms of probably not in terms of swastika tattoos, they might do that.
Well, even age. I was thinking
in
they
terms
don't
of age,
discriminate in any way.
They do that. Sure.
Like if you walked into a burning
when
building,
nowhere near enough facilities after an earthquake or something, doctors don't save 20-year-old people over 80-year-old people. Of course they do.
Oh, do they? Okay. I had heard
they
didn't.
I don't. Around the world, I'm sure that they do. I'm absolutely sure that they do. Whether they admit that they do or not, when the resources are absolutely strapped like that, I'm sure they don't pretend like the 20-year-old and the 80-year-old have just as much,
Interesting. I thought they did, and I thought the same thing was
if somebody who's been in that kind of experience can come in here and legitimately tell me that doctors and nurses don't make, and EMTs don't make those kind of distinctions when faced with that kind of event.
But I agree with you. I think,
but soldiers certainly do. I mean, like combat medics, they certainly do know who it's more vital to the mission.
Really interesting. Okay.
You think they don't save officers, or they don't save people who have crucial roles in the operation?
Maybe.
Somebody who's like a very important pilot or something over.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. But anyways, I think I agree with you that I wouldn't want. I would want somebody more. I don't know about the person, but I'd want the decisions to be utilitarian based for regulations for cars and planes and speed limits and all those different things.
Every time you do that, every time you make a decision about the speed limit or about how you're going to design roads and bike lanes, and you're ultimately causing some individuals to be killed or injured who otherwise wouldn't have been killed or injured in the process of saving other individuals. There's always going to be.
It depends on what you mean by cause.
Well, yeah, that's deontologists like to have lots of 100 different words for different ways of causing. And when I just say choose and cause, I say, in the trolley problem, you're either choosing to cause one death or you're choosing to cause 5 deaths. And I don't understand the magic words that make the ways of choosing to cause be different. It's choosing to cause exactly the same way as when they're trolleys on 2 different tracks. So I think,
do you do that then? Like if somebody said like if a plane was crashing and there was 5 people in it, and somebody said, if you press this button and end the life of this person here, would you do it?
well, I mean, that's where there's the distinction between, psychological capacity to do what's right and just the definition of what's right. It's very clear that that's what's right.
Well, do you think the best moral outcome is what's right?
Yes. Yeah, that means the same thing. Yeah, the best
I
moral
know it
outcome is to
probably
press the button and kill the 1 person and save the 5 people, assuming that there's no like big objective difference between them. Like it's 5 really, really old people who are about to die anyway, and it's 1 healthy young person.
Maybe I have a
Or
different.
something.
Maybe I just don't have a good understanding of
Or
how
it's
I
5
use the
serial
word
killers
moral.
versus 1 like
Oh yeah, no. I think that should all be removed.
pediatrician.
But I would say a random 5 people dying is worse than a random 1 person dying. But choosing which one, especially depending on how it's taking place, I don't know if I think that's the same as saying like that would be the right thing to do.
Yeah, but so do you have the clear distinction like I do between the right thing to do and what it would be kind of emotionally and psychologically easy for you to do? Or do you think those kind of blend together? Like,
no, I feel like I'm very good at separating emotions. I don't not kill the one because it's emotionally difficult for me. I can kill a person. I'll do it. It has nothing to do with emotions. It has to do with I have this thought in my head because, again, my focus in life is wanting to survive. I care about myself, my health. I don't want to be harmed. So, which is why if I was a carnivore, I would want to not be killed for eating zebras and gazelles.
yeah.
And so same would go for
So
I don't want to die
if you were a
to
child
save.
abuser, would you, serial killer of children, wouldn't you not want for people to catch you and put you in jail?
No. Very true. So I when I factor in the moral side of like something like eating, like being a carnivore or breathing or something like that, I would factor in what's a necessity to survive. Everything else would be a separate topic. So in that sense of necessities, if I needed to consume a living innocent victim, I wouldn't want to be taken out. So that's why I don't personally kill. I wouldn't kill predators. I wouldn't kill a lion unless it was killing for fun, and then I would kill the lion. But so in the sense that I don't want somebody to kill me, I don't want to sacrifice my own life to save 1 billion people. I heard you and Jerome talking about that, and that is correct. I wouldn't kill another person for 1 billion people, and I wouldn't sacrifice myself. The reason I wouldn't kill another is because I wouldn't sacrifice myself. I don't want somebody to kill me in a hypothetical to save 1 billion people, so I wouldn't do that to another innocent person.
So let's trolley problem this for the egoist, because you can. So you got more than 1 child. So you're making this infinite value claim for yourself, but also for your children. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got. I know this is emotionally hard, but you can separate yourself from it. You just acknowledged that a minute ago. So on the main track is 1 of your children.
Okay.
And on the side track that the trolley can be, no, on the main track is 1 of your children plus 1 million other people, and on the side track is just the other 1 of your children. So now you still think that you should not pull the lever and let 1 of your children die plus 1 million other people, because those 1 million other people don't even factor into the equation, and pulling the lever is worse because you did something.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I don't, now choosing something devastating like this based on children is a whole thing. I can't, In the same sense that I can't separate the emotions in sacrificing myself, I would love to sacrifice myself to save 1 million people or 1 billion people, but I don't think I could get myself to. It would be the same with kids. So I like the extreme example of any wild hypothetical. I just honestly, I can't separate my emotions in
Okay,
that
that's why I
sense.
put another one of your children on the main track.
Yeah. So in that sense that it's just a random set of 2 of my children, one's on one track, one's on the other. The 1 million people do not affect that. I just let nature take its course.
Okay, so then you would, the million
Unless I
people
could
would
see
not
into the future and
affect it.
I like absolutely like one of my kids is going to be Hitler or something.
So it's
But yeah,
like you're
just
comparing two equal infinities
uh-huh.
in your 2 children, and then the million
Oh,
other
I
people
see
don't
what you're
matter.
saying. I see what you're saying. That because those are equal, I should save them, where I wouldn't to end another person.
You
I
have to
see.
have one of your children be hit by the trolley in any case. So then do you still think that
Yeah.
like the purity of your not being the one that pulled the lever and letting your child that's on the main track be the one who's killed along with 1 million other people is better than pulling the lever and having it be, your fault.
Yeah.
You're the one that killed the child that's on the other track.
Yeah, though I think the only thing that could factor in a difference would be some accepting of, let's see.
And would it make a difference if you didn't know, like if you didn't know which of the children, you didn't know their identity on each of the tracks, you just knew like they were inside some kind of bag or something, and you just knew that on each of those tracks was one of your children, but you couldn't look at the track and say that's so and so, that's so and so. It was completely like a black box to you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just say, well, I might as well pull the lever and save 1 million other people. Is that kind of putting an infinite value even on yourself, even on your child or other loved one? It seems like you can't coherently put infinite value on any one being.
The only thing making this challenge whatsoever is if we're equalizing the 2 children, and if one of them must die, then we're essentially saying, if a train was going towards 1 million people, would I pull a lever to make it go towards none?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's how it sounds to me.
That's the only reason it's complicated for me, where normally that's not the case. Unless you think it is. But I think I'm being thrown off by the idea of it being people that I'd emotionally be linked to. Yeah.
So one of your children is equal in value to another one of your children. That makes sense. But when somebody like me thinks about the original trolley problem, the one person on the side track is equal to one of the people on the main track. Just like your one child is equal to your other child. The one is equal to one, like then that one equal to the one remains the same. And so pulling the lever in the original trolley problem, is similar to pulling the lever when there's 4 people on the main track and you can redirect it to nothing. 5 versus 1 is similar to 4 versus 0.
Yeah, no, not when you factor in the element of the thing that makes me choose differently. Now, if we're talking about what I consider to be a morally better outcome, I can answer it easily, but not something that I think we as humans should do.
Okay, that's interesting. Hearing different terms from deontologists is really interesting.
If a train hit 5 people, that's way worse.
Optimal. Okay.
Well, no.
It's worse. It's worse for the world when 5 people get hit than when 1 person gets hit.
I think a worse thing took place, in a sense, for sure.
And you said it would be morally better if the 1 person were to be hit than the 5. Like, let's say you didn't know which one the trolley was going towards, and you could just wish. Like, you couldn't affect the trolley at all. But which one do you hope? You hope that it hits the 5 people, or you hope that it hits the 1 person.
I don't know if I'd have a hope. Let's see. Okay.
Wow. Okay. You wouldn't even be able to hope that it would hit 1 rather than 5?
No.
Because you'd feel complicit if you hoped that it hit the 1 and then it actually did.
Yeah, I might just personally feel funny about that. But yeah, I think I would hope it would hit the I would hope it would hit the 1. Yeah. Even if I was asked, if there was no lever and somebody was just saying it's going to hit 1, you got to pick, I would pick the 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I would pick the 1, so I'd have to hope the 1. It feels weird hoping, that's just why there's an element there. I just wouldn't take the action. It's kind of like if 6 people walked into a hospital, and 5 walked out versus 1 walking out. It feels like it's better if the 5 walked out, but it is not better to take the organs out of the 1 to fix the 5 that needed the organs.
Yeah, so it's a better result, but it's not better for the person making the choice to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so that very fact right there, to say this is a better result, but it's a worse thing for the choosing individual to choose to do, that defines, to a consequentialist, thinking morality is about your own purity rather than about the other people involved. Like, and in the context of veganism, that's why we call, certain people, not for the animals. They're for their own purity rather than for the animals.
For sure. But no, I think the thing that's missed is it seems like I'm caring about the purity more than the overall good, but I'm viewing the overall good of the individual that's being affected differently, I guess. Also, the reason I barely think it's better for something to not happen to a higher number, I don't even know if I have a good reason to care about that higher number, because I don't view 5 as 5 and 1 as 1. 5 is 5 different individual ones. So it only matters in a sense because and my brain might be off.
That's why I bring up road policy and stuff all the time, because that would be absurd. We couldn't have any halfway reasonable society if there weren't people making very important decisions that do trade off different ones against different ones. There's no world without that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Life has trade-offs, and oftentimes those trade-offs are in life and death terms, or in reduced lifespan terms, or other things. And and when you say, if you really take that all the way and say that you can't compare a individual's worth against another individual's worth because they're different ones, then you just can't make reasonable decisions about anything important in the structure of society, because they all have trade-offs. Even when you just value your pleasure of driving to the movie theater, you're increasing the risk of other people on the road getting killed. But then that's not to say that decision is bad, but it's to say that whether it's good or bad depends on the probabilities of trading off, benefit to some against harm to others. So we can make those comparisons.
Yeah. And each of those things get more and more complicated as you break them down. I guess I just have such a strong stance on intentional actions violating negative rights. It just that is my go-to, even if I wasn't involved. Like if I was just some godly thing looking down, sharing my thoughts, and I wasn't part of the world, it wouldn't matter if it was happening to me or others. It's just the idea of that negative rights violation. And
so I think it's very important to keep emphasizing, that consequences are built into the very definition of negative rights. This example of like, if you walk down a suburban street and start firing bullets around you, that will hit houses, that's considered a negative rights violation. But if you walk down the street and have a conversation and the sound waves hit those houses, it's not considered a negative rights violation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, how do you explain the difference between the bullets and the sound waves, which both physically encounter the houses? How do you explain that difference? That's not about consequences. That's not about, you know,
Yeah.
the fact. It seems like the only reason that anybody is inclined to call the spraying of bullets a rights violation is that bullets have a very high probability of killing or seriously injuring someone, or at the very least damaging their property, you know, and sound waves don't. But then the second part of that thought experiment is, what if we lived in a world where sound waves, you know, at above a normal amount of like speaking decibels, what if sound waves could cause agonizing pain or like serious injury to people and property? Then we would immediately regard, you know, speaking too loudly on a public street as a negative rights violation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which is why we end up coming up with things like harassment laws. Like it's when you're trying to figure out if you have a huge focus on wanting freedom of speech, but you try to figure out which one should be factored in, which things, like if somebody walked up to somebody on the street and just started saying all the most horrible things to them, at what point does your freedom of speech go away? And I think
it follows from the consequences.
Yeah. Well,
so people who want to talk in terms of freedom of speech and say that it's not about consequences, they create these exceptions like harassment or aggressive hate speech or whatever. They create these new deontologists create these new words precisely when the consequences start to matter.
Yeah, and I want to break that down a little bit, but somebody in chat named I'm Pickle Twitch wanted to join and chat with something, so I'm going to add them real quick.
I was agreeing with them a lot on the chat earlier.
Oh, okay.
Hey
there. What's up?
Yeah. Thanks for having me here.
For sure.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I just want to say that the whole problem of deontology trying to craft a set of rules on this problem that's classifying something as moral or immoral. It's when I'm looking at this conversation, there are just so many dimensions to this that you basically cannot craft a set of rules. It's very difficult. Like there's always another situation and another situation, and in this scenario, I think that the more reasonable point is to actually trust your intuition a lot more, because essentially what your intuition is it's like mechanisms in your brain that guide your behavior when it's too complex for you to rationalize it.
What would be an example that you think the intuition might tell you to do that you think is acceptable to do, even though it seemed like it might not be if you're going the deontologist approach?
So if you have like some kind of a rule about not killing you yourself, but you have the trolley problem and you have 5 people on this side and 1 person on this side, then you need to decide. But then you know some other things about these people, and then you need to decide about that. Like maybe those 5 people are Nazis, I don't know, and this other person is a good person.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think, because like in my mind, that would just be like if I had more information, I could say that here is the rule-based reason I would do the thing. So I don't know if it would be intuition or not. But it's complicated. Like maybe more so. Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I would agree that it's complicated. In fact, I would actually say that if you had to craft a set of rules to properly solve this problem, the number of rules in that set would be significantly larger than the number of particles in the universe. I'm I'm confidently saying that because, like, you have this, one thing which is how many people are on this side versus how many on this side, which is one axis, one dimension. Then you have, are you consciously doing it? Are you just wishing it? Are they evil? Is there this and that? And for every problem, you basically need to put it to the power of 2, the power of 3, the power of 4 for the number of solutions. It's not, you're not multiplying it, you're just
Yeah.
putting it to the next power. It's like cube, it's like line, square, cube, hypercube.
Gotcha.
You
Well,
know,
so what is your answer? So when it's going towards a 5 and you could have it go towards a 1, which do you do?
I would switch it to the 1.
Switch it to the 1. Okay. And you are calling this a reaction based on intuition, not a reaction that you would describe as consequentialism?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. Oh, hold on. A reaction based on intuition and not
You,
as. I think essentially
Okay.
intuition is you're trying to evaluate what the consequence of something is, but it's not based on very solid rules.
oh, okay. Okay. The intuition is used in various different ways, so I wasn't sure exactly what you meant by it.
I
But
think,
yeah,
guys,
interesting.
this is meta ethics versus normative ethics here. When it's
Mm,
saying it's based on intuition, that's a form of like how you ground your ethics, or what ethics
yeah,
is. Ethical
you
intuition
need to
is
have certain rules, but you should also have exceptions because you cannot have a rule about every single exception, and
yeah.
it's just impossible to make rules about every single exception.
I 100% agree. This is how it feels to talk to deontologists. Is like you're talking about something like the height of buildings. Which building is taller than another building, and you think of height as height of a building as a continuum.
Hmm.
Some things are lower or higher than others, and then the deontologist has these rules about rules about what makes this building taller than this building, and then you give an
Yeah.
exception to their rule, and then they make another rule, and it's like, what do you need all these rules for? you know
Yeah. Well,
there's just
in that case, I want to hear what both of you think about my idea on the definition of veganism. Now, I get the idea of being against the idea of changing a definition, but let's imagine a definition didn't exist and you heard people talk about the idea of the one that currently exists, and then you look at mine, which is I think veganism should be a philosophy that extends moral consideration to animals, and anybody that is on the spectrum at all is a vegan. Anybody that, if you say like, oh, if you're eating this piece of cake that you needed to get dairy from it, and it's not beneficial for your health, you're not doing it for survival, that you're harming this animal, like this is not reasonable to do. And so anyways, you can have various different conversations with people on a spectrum of some vegans might be vegan except they eat a spoonful of honey, and some people might be close to vegan but they eat some fish. But the philosophy is that they're extending moral consideration to sentient beings. And the reason why I think this must happen is because the spectrum we're talking about, that if you have these set rules, it will never work out. If you're saying a vegan must not kill an animal, then it has to be something like that thing I was talking to George about earlier. I don't know if you were both there, but when I was saying that if you kill a deer that's about to eat an apple, that is the same thing as killing a mouse or insects or whatever other sentient beings to grow your crops. And therefore, anybody that eats a vegan dessert is either they are not vegan, or you're saying it is not practicable to not be like overweight or something, which I'm overweight, so I can't complain, but we're just talking about facts here. Or you have to tell me what arbitrary line we're going to demand make somebody a vegan or not.
Yeah, I don't think there is an arbitrary line in morality, and so I don't care about the like morally. I don't care about so, somebody satisfying or not satisfying the definition of veganism, and so then practically, just practically in my life, I don't have any problem with vegan meaning a kind of simple consumption based thing where if somebody says they're a vegan, it means they don't directly consume any animal products for food or clothing. If a restaurant says that it's vegan, it doesn't mean like they consider it vegan because like for every fish they killed, they donated a certain amount of money to animal liberation charity, and that offset it or whatever. Like we don't need that kind of complexity in daily life.
Yeah.
A vegan restaurant should just mean a restaurant that doesn't use any animal products. And
well, I think that would be a separate word referring
directly consume any animal products.
Yeah.
But I don't morally, I don't care about whether I or anybody else satisfies the definition of vegan. I care.
Do you think it should be
actions that are morally better or morally worse in terms of the effect they have on the sentient
I agree,
beings?
but just really quickly, because I think the biggest concern probably is how broadly or how widely we use the term vegan referring to diet. Do you think that maybe it's best to either have vegan also be a word that's used specifically for diet, or use plant-based? Because here's the thing, a lot of vegans,
in the restaurant context, it makes sense to have vegan as a commonly understood word, even though I don't think there's anything morally wrong with.
Should bivalves be left out of it if it says it's a vegan?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for clearness, right? A restaurant calling itself vegan should not have clams.
Okay.
Even though I think there's nothing wrong with eating clams.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I won't say it should be about animals necessarily, but about sentient beings.
Yeah.
And yeah. So again, there might be some exceptions to the rules, but I don't think that we should be shifting the actual, not law, but the actual way we operate so much to just fit the exception, because it's going to cascade into other things. It's going to encompass other things, and it's just going to go into ridiculousness at some point.
Yeah, it very well could. I don't think it would. I think in the same sense that you're probably right, because we have to base a lot of our actions off what the norms are. So even though us and many other vegans would say bivalves are fine because they're not sentient, it's probably best to have the vegans that do care about bivalves not go and order a meal that they're told is fully vegan and it has it in it. So it's almost like as if it's almost like the idea of the difference between like sex and gender or whatever. When you're talking about food, for the sake of it being easy, you're referring to what's animal or plant. And your diet, even though it affects morals, it's not talking about morals. But just because it could be a mess to adjust the name of veganism, I think it would be a very well welcomed mess. If you took all I'm sure there's got to be like 20, 30, 40% of humans out there that consume animal products, that if they like became part of our group because they care about animals and they want to fight for welfare reform, they're against factory farming, they would love to see laws go in place where farms are held accountable and they can't cut out the teeth and the tails of pigs and all this stuff. And they want to close SeaWorld and this or that, but they think they need a little meat for their health. I don't know. I don't want to change the definition just to get those people, but I love the fact that because your actions in the world have to be on a spectrum and we are going to be killing animals for our own taste pleasure by eating vegan donuts, it's awesome that it works out that if we were to expand that, we would have a world changing for the better, I think.
Actually, I just want to say, a few streams ago, I heard you talking about this, having pleasurable food as vegans and being overweight. And I kind of agreed with you. So basically, I started tracking my calories about that. I wouldn't track them about losing weight. I downloaded Chronometer because of that.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
Moral calorie tracking. That's really good.
Yeah,
excellent.
amazing.
Yeah, like I too, like I've been overweight off and on most of my life, and I want to be healthy just because I think it's good to be healthy, to feel good, but also I feel more compelled to do it because of the moral side of things.
I think there's
Yeah.
a big issue in who you think you could personally advertise to, and how you can change society. If you can really have a positive impact on people, stopping their consumption of animal products by producing these, what is it called in like consumerist society, like decadent, delicious, calorie rich, vegan foods. If that's a really important thing to getting millions more people to eliminate directly consuming animal products, then there's a case to be made that we should promote that. We should promote those kind of restaurants and those kind of food in the supermarket, prepared vegan foods, for the advertising effect.
Yeah.
I think those need to exist. I think it needs to convince people to switch over, because that's part of it. I feel like those items are good for convincing people of a moral understanding. It's they can't get to the level of thinking to care about animals unless they can satisfy their taste pleasures in a different way, and then they shift over. Which is why when I talk about topics like the crop deaths and the calorie element and things as wild as like predator culling, I would only ever do that with fellow vegans, fellow philosophical people. And one day it will be the norm. Someday when half the produce that exists uses pesticides and the other half does not, it will become just as easy as vegans can say you can't consume honey. They'll say, of course you're not vegan if you ate this thing that killed crops or whatever, or killed insects and rodents and stuff in crops. But it'll take a shift in innovation and us being able to produce at a low cost these things, I think. So
I wanted to say, Carson, also that I really dislike the identity label and the identity concept as vegans. We are vegans. We have this vegan identity. Therefore, we don't consume X, Y, Z. Because,
Or maybe
the moral reality applies to everybody. It does feel to me very much, and I've heard a lot of people say this, but they don't sort of seem to keep it in focus all the time. But it doesn't sound any more right than saying, I'm a non-child abuser, therefore I don't do these things that support child abuse. That's not.
Yeah,
I don't
but
have an identity as a non-child abuser. I'm just a normal
pointless to
person
say that
who thinks abusing
because
children is
that's the
wrong.
norm.
yeah. Sorry, what was that?
It's pointless to say
Right.
that because that's the norm.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like it's good
It makes
to
sense. It makes sense to be able to say you're a vegan, but
Yeah,
ultimately,
but
I want to say
maybe
eating this fried chicken and causing that harm to chickens is just wrong. It's wrong for everybody. I want to make the same kind of general moral statement. I don't want to say I have this identity and you respect my identity by knowing that I don't consume fried chicken.
Yeah.
It's a universal truth. It's a universal.
There's a difference.
It applies to every human being that it's wrong to do that.
Yeah. There's a difference between saying this is immoral and saying this is immoral, I don't do it and you do. And that's kind of the idea of why I think veganism should be this broader thing. Is it's still people not, like I subscribe to veganism. It is the moral philosophy I approve of, but I approved of it 20 years ago when I first went vegan, and then a year and a half into it, I fell off the wagon because I missed meat so bad, and I ate meat. But I still subscribed to that philosophy. I felt like shit. I thought I was being horrible when I did it. I never left that philosophy. I was still what I would call a person that holds beliefs in vegan philosophy, and I ate meat, and then I became vegan again, and I went back and forth, and now I've been vegan for like 8 years. But I think in my mind, how I look at the philosophy and talking to humans, and I want to talk to fellow humans, I feel just as good talking to my friends that weren't vegan and became vegan and still eat a little fish or something, because they're figuring out what they're doing in life. They have these moral ideas, but they're humans in this world where a lot of people do a lot of different things. And I don't think like, oh, that's my almost vegan friend, whatever, and I like them a little less than this full vegan friend. I just think like,
Well, I would
we
still
all
call
have
him an
these different
almost
ideas,
vegan.
yeah.
I would still call him an almost vegan friend, because that's what's going to make sense to most people, that they do sometimes consume animal products on purpose, sentient animals on purpose. I would call them almost vegan, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily more immoral than somebody who's vegan but also does other bad things in the world.
Okay, well,
The
what if
vegan
they're
could be a worse person.
Don't you think that kind of dissolves the what veganism is? If you call it almost vegan, it almost feels like it's not even an ethical stance. It's more like a
you're almost actively ethical. Yeah.
No, I don't think that not doing something ethical fully means that it's not ethical.
No, I agree.
I think
Well,
I
I
agree. I mean, I agree with Carson's assessment that somebody who like is against. I mean, there's lots of real world examples, but somebody who's against drunk driving, but then a couple of times in their life they've slightly crossed that line. After they had 3 beers, they drove for a little while, but they still have never driven after they had 8 beers, and they don't like do it every week. They've maybe done it once or twice in their life. That's somebody who has that moral understanding, but they're not doing it perfectly.
Yeah, but is eating a little bit of fish and a little bit of something else the equivalent of 4 beers or the equivalent of 8 beers?
It's a good question. You have to measure the
Where's
harms.
where's the threshold?
Yeah. Well,
there
here's
isn't one.
So,
there isn't
so,
one. They're just things that you do that are morally righter or morally wronger than other things that you do.
I mean, if they test you for alcohol, there is a threshold.
Well, there's not a. This is crucial. There's not a threshold in morality.
I was
of
just
course,
going to say that.
The law defines thresholds. The law,
and we can use morality to adjust the law. But yeah, you're right.
Systems. There's if you play a game of chess, there are obligations. On your turn, you have to move exactly one piece, and it has to be one of your own pieces. It has to follow certain rules. Rule systems create obligations, and they create sharp dividing lines.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that morality is not a rule system. Morality is a dimension based upon the level of effect you have on sentient creatures, from worse to much better. Morality is not a set of rules that can be followed or broken. Morality is always
you can do various
a dimension,
immoral things.
a moral dimension.
Okay. So Angelo here in the comments said, I think it'd be fair to call it pre-vegan. And here's my concern with pre-vegan is we're looking at it from this like linear timeline. But what if you imagined, okay, so I'm 37. Let's say I live to be 80. And let's say we can look in the future and we would know everything for the rest of my life until my death. And let's say I used to like jerky, like made from beef. And I had situations where I fell off the wagon. I ate a thing of jerky. I felt horrible. I went back to being full on dietarily vegan. So from now, 37 through 80, let's say I eat 5 sticks of beef jerky in 43 years. And it's just randomly split up between those years. The rest of the time, I'm fully vegan. Did I become, when I ate the jerky, was I pre-vegan and then I started veganism over again? Or between now 37 and 80, what was I if I did these actions? And how different are those 5 beef jerkies from 50 or 1,000 vegan cakes? At what point was I not vegan anymore?
I don't really think that's a very important question.
So over this whole time, you've been holding the philosophy of veganism, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've kind of fell off because of a moment of weakness.
Yeah.
So I think we should ask how conscious was this action as you did it, because if your beliefs were strong and it was that bad, like how straight were you thinking? How
Mm-hmm. Which I don't think is a good excuse, but I think it is what exists. And if eating beef jerky was against the law, then you would have a stronger reason to not act upon your desires, your want for a dopamine increase. But yeah, I don't think there's any way to necessarily justify a bad act. We can acknowledge that we all will have some bad and some good acts.
I mean, I don't think the question of whether having these like small amount of beef jerkies across your life makes you stop being vegan and start being vegan again is really a morally critical question. It's just a question about the semantics of words. But the more important questions are something like, is someone who won't date a non-vegan and is an activist and advocate against factory farming, but then eats 5 pieces of beef jerky throughout the many years of their life. Are they morally better or morally worse than somebody who never ever puts an animal product into their body, but is married to a carnist who eats animals 3 times a day and supports them in their life and is willing to go to the restaurant and order food with animal products for their spouse? Which one of those people is morally worse? Obviously the one who's married to the carnist, not the one who the activist who only ate 5 pieces of beef jerky throughout their life. So the issues to me are, is it more important to focus entirely on the things that you put into your own body and act as if they're morally more important than every other choice you make in the world? And I say definitely not. It's all the choices you make in the world.
Yeah, which is why I think any example of any of this stuff we're talking about, in my mind, fits into veganism, and therefore, I guess I don't need to change the definition. I didn't invent the word veganism. I just wish if I could look at things and go like, oh man, this would have been better. Like whoever invented this way of having this silent letter on this word, I'm very pissed at them. If I could just go with like, this is what I think would be best. I want there to be a philosophy that describes veganism without having a notation that you have to do certain actions that must be arbitrary. And so in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. But I kind of wish that that people that cared about animals and were trying various different ways, like if somebody thought they needed fish for health because of all the studies they read, and they were vegan except for they ate fish. Maybe that's what Alex O'Connor is. Who knows? But everything in their lives they did was actively trying to have a better outcome for animals. They were trying to end SeaWorld, all these different things. Like I want whatever philosophy they follow, I want that to be thought of as my philosophy, even though I don't eat fish because I don't think we need them. But I don't want to separate. I just wish there was one philosophy for everybody.
So Carson, I think that just in the practice of talking to ordinary people, instead of definitions, I think just analogies work better and just kind of make more sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Just saying like, you know the way. Yeah, you know the way that you think about dogs, and you know the kind of things that you don't think it would be right to do to dogs. Well, pigs are pretty similar animals to dogs, and so we vegans, or I, whether even if I don't say vegan, but just kind of what it means for me to be a vegan is I now think about doing things to pigs for my personal benefit is similar to how you guys already think about doing things to dogs.
Yeah.
You know how you think
And
about parrots and what you should and shouldn't do to a parrot? Well, I think the same way about chickens, because chickens are pretty similar to parrots. You know the way you feel about dolphins, I feel the same way about cows, right?
yeah, and also I see most people use analogies for basically for logical debates, but I recently started watching this guy debug your brain,
Oh,
and
he's great. Yeah.
yeah, I saw how he uses analogies for emotional um to induce emotions. I really like this one. He like goes to people and says something like, if you had the power to talk to animals and you were in front of this pig in front of the gas chambers, after showing them the video, and he's like, if that pig asks you, why are you gonna put me in this gas chambers? Why are you gonna put me in this gas chamber? Then what would you honestly tell that pig? Like, what would your excuse be?
Yeah, imagine yourself saying
Yeah,
bacon, making a bacon joke,
yeah.
and then listening to your own words like an
Yeah, but
observer.
also
Right.
it depends on the rapport
Yeah.
you've built before that, because they're emotional right now and you're asking them this and they're like, what would I honestly say there? It's
Yeah.
like, because I have to eat. Okay, can't you just eat something else? Well, no. Okay, are you lying? Because we just talked about, you know, Beyond Burgers diet, whatever.
How Beyond
Yeah.
Burgers taste really good.
Yeah.
How they tried one last week and it was amazing, and now they're saying that they need.
I got to cut you guys off real quick. I actually got to run, but if you guys actually have any interest talking, I can leave it up again like I did that one time.
Mm.
Do you
up
guys
to
want to
you.
keep talking?
You're doing well. This is your
Not
first time
sure. Yeah.
on the channel.
Yeah.
Do you want
Yeah.
to keep talking to Jeremy?
Sure. I mean,
Okay. And when you guys are done, just leave whenever. You don't have to stay till I show up. I just got to run, but I'll just leave this up. All right. Good talking, guys. Take care.
okay. Thanks.
So what's on your mind?
So, I mean, before we were talking about utilitarianism and versus deontology, and I'm not sure right now what's popping in my mind is that I think that deontology is basically utilitarianism. You're just putting the utility of a set of rules over the utility of making, so say, micro decisions. Like, I'm saying micro decisions like micromanaging your
Um,
decisions.
I think that's the kind of mistake that I've been trying to point out more and more that a lot of vegan advocates are making. I think they're thinking about consequentialism, about rights, like
Yeah.
minimizing the violation of rights. They're thinking about that as deontology, but that is really a form of consequentialism. Because deontology is not about changing other people or changing the world. Deontology is about following the rules yourself. So
Yeah, exactly.
George Martin, Joey Armstrong, Earthling Ed, almost all of these vegan advocates, they're I hear them expressing a consequentialist view, because anybody who says they're abolitionists or liberationists, those are consequentialist concepts, because you're trying to change the state of the world. You're trying to change the world for the sake of the victims.
Yeah,
That's
it's
producing
like
consequences.
it's trying to it's consequentialism, but you're trying to use rules to have better consequence on the world, in a
Yeah, and
sense. But
that's
it's
fine.
way too complicated to use just
Yeah.
rules.
Oh yeah, of course. You can't do the calculation every day, and right from the beginning, the utilitarians understood this. Jeremy Bentham wrote, that you shouldn't go up and kick a stranger, and the reasons have to do with the fact that almost always the pain from being kicked is worse than whatever pleasure someone might get from kicking someone else. And then also, if people have to be worried every time they go out on the street, they have to be worried about getting kicked, then they'll have fear and they'll have to change their lives, and that will produce negative consequences. So it's
Yeah,
much
and
better to have a rule that says
it
don't kick
result in
someone.
people being more armed and ready for
Right.
being kicked, and it cascades.
So a rule that says don't kick someone with no good reason is a very good rule in terms of the consequences that it has. And so we use those kind of rules all of the time in our lives.
Yeah.
And rules like that about treating non-human animals are also very, very good rules, but still the consequences are the thing that matters. And when a rule...
And the consequences basically aren't for us, so we need to explain them because they're kind of far away.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to... We can't be expected to calculate every consequence, all of the consequences of every action. But we justify which rules are good rules and which rules are bad rules based upon the consequences. But I think it's more important to understand what deontology, for me to explain again what deontology really is. Deontology is not this stronger form of consequentialism that believes that we have to protect everyone's rights in the world. That's not deontology. Deontology is usually weaker than consequentialism. Deontology says you should not be breaking the rules. You should not be violating rights. And then after that, you don't have to care about what other people do. So if you were a really deontologist vegan, you would say you would think that you have to make sure that you never violate an animal's rights.
But what everyone else does doesn't matter.
Yeah, you wouldn't care about stopping McDonald's from killing so many animals, torturing so many animals, because that's not something you're doing. You're not supporting them anymore.
Or arguing with somebody whether something's good or not.
Yeah, why would you get on the internet and try to convince people? Why would you try to change the law? Why would you try to change other people's consumption? If you were a deontologist, you would think, I'm not breaking the rules. That's my obligation. And then anything else that I do, like activism, that's just an extra. Deontologists say that that's morally virtuous, but it's not an obligation, and it's not part of my essential morality. My essential morality is about my purity, my not violating any rules.
There's also this other discussion that I've seen where it's like, if you are able to prevent a very immoral act by depriving yourself of something, you're not doing it, you're in a sense complicit in that immoral act. And I've actually heard it from non-vegans, and it was about charity. If you're not giving up your comforts to give these resources to charity, you're in a sense complicit in starving children.
Yeah. Do you know about Peter Singer's argument about the child drowning in a pond?
I think I've heard it.
I guess you know who Peter Singer is, right?
I've heard that name.
He's one of the most influential philosophers on the animal ethics movement. He wrote a book called Animal Liberation.
Oh yeah.
50 years ago, I think 1973. And so, you know, he gets called non-vegan. I guess I would say he's a non-vegan too. He's an almost vegan, you know, but he really does have, you know, animal ethics at the front of his mind, ending factory farming. And but he's a utilitarian philosopher. So he has many books, but his other very influential book is called The Life You Can Save. And he wrote it in a paper, in a philosophical article before that. And the article gave this example where you're just walking to work or school, and you see this small child drowning in a pond, a very shallow pond. So you could easily save the child, but you're wearing some kind of shoes or some kind of expensive clothes that you just bought. And if you were to rush in and save that child, you would destroy your let's say shoes that cost $100.
Yeah.
And so he says, you know, he tests people's intuition, and of course almost everybody says, you know, you have to save the child. You would be a monster if you just said, I can't bother getting my clothes damaged, and you just continued walking along, right? But then he says there are children in the world who you could save with $100. This was in a long time ago, so
yeah, that's
maybe
exactly
there's
the argument.
Yeah, and what you would give up if you donated that $100 is probably one of your hobbies, or something like nice shoes or food that you don't need to eat. It's just pleasure food, or alcohol or something. And so he makes that analogy, and he says, you know, if we would be horrible, evil people for thinking our shoes are more important than the child in the pond, then aren't we just as evil? Aren't normal people
just as
evil?
complicit as you know, someone that would cause this situation? And I've also heard thing is, the people that talk against this utilitarianism, they kind of make this divide between utilitarianism and rights, and makes you know, scenarios where it would be ridiculous not to take the rights into consideration and work on utilitarianism, but rights are a utility on their own, and in these scenarios you can take them into consideration.
I think that rights are an indirect utility. I think they're sort of like they're a summary for facts about utility. And I think most of the deontologist words are like that. So the names for different crimes, different kind of ways that you can violate somebody's rights, the reason they exist is because those things almost always have very negative utility, you know. Like the reason why there's a word rape is that kind of action causes very, very negative utility. And the reason why there's not a separate word for like tapping someone on the shoulder without their consent, there's not a word in our language for that, because it's not a big problem, because that doesn't cause negative utility.
Yeah, so I guess the way you would define whether something is moral or immoral is you would need it to be to be within the realm of morality, you would need it to be conscious and to have some kind of utility, negative or positive or neutral. So if I lift up my hand, is that moral or is it immoral?
Yeah,
It's
on its
amoral.
own, nothing. Right?
It's not moral.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
amoral. If if a volcano erupts, is that a moral thing or
Yeah, that's right.
a moral thing?
Yeah,
It's not conscious. It's not in the realm of morality.
it can affect the good. It can affect the goodness or badness of the world by affecting
Yeah,
sentient creatures. But because it's not acting, the volcano is not choosing. It can't be morally right or wrong.
yeah.
It can
That's
make the world morally worse, but it can't be morally wrong.
it can make the world worse, but it's not morally wrong, and that's kind of why I said this about um, you know, the five the 5 times they kind of cheated on veganism.
Hmm.
Like, what was the situation? How desperate was it? Did you just switch your moral view at this point and then kind of um and then kind of went back, or was it such a moment of weakness that you couldn't? You basically weren't sober.
What if this person had a very conscious decision and they were saying something like, "I'm going to keep remembering or like reinforcing my commitment to veganism when I explain it to other people by reminding myself what this animal product that I used to like so much tasted like." And then, oh, that's what it tastes like. And then, okay, it's
Yeah,
still not hard
addicts
to give
tend to
that up.
rationalize things,
Yeah, but what if that was
but
someone's actual reason, that they were just trying to
uh,
remind themselves of what other people in the world are experiencing,
I
so that
don't
they
know.
can.
Addicts just tend to rationalize their addiction
I
often,
know,
kind
I
of like
understand
that.
that's true. I understand that that's true.
But it's like, then again, if it's another immoral action, like a guy within the span of 8 years hit his wife 5 times in an absolute rage, like he wasn't sober there, but then it's like, yeah, that's not. Maybe I'm
So,
wrong
what would
about
the
this.
claim be, that guy is not okay and his relationship is not okay? Because then I would say sure. But
It's
if
an
you were
immoral.
going to say that, like, he doesn't believe that abusing your wife is wrong,
Yeah,
I would disagree, and I would say that there are people who believe that something is wrong and then they end up doing it sometimes, for sure. Even myself, not with beating my wife, but with other things that I believe are wrong or morally worse, and then sometimes I do them.
yeah. I feel like this would apply in the first scenario we talked about, but not in this other scenario for some reason. But
But then you also have to be able to compare people along the entire dimension, right? That's important.
yeah,
The you know you A deontologist maybe wants to draw this line between wife beater and non-wife beater, and it's important how wrong it is for some guy to beat his wife even one time. That's still a very wrong thing, and it's a very important fact about that person's behavior. But you still have to be able to say that this guy who sometimes got too drunk and beat his wife is very, very different from the guy who just sadistically hits his wife every day, right? It- it-
yeah.
So you can't just put those two guys in the
it's-
same category and say there's no difference between them.
Yeah, but I guess they're both crossing the same threshold. Like they're on a spectrum,
But one of them
it's
is
like
causing
if you get
way more harm than the other, I think.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe if we talk about drunk driving, if you get drunk and you make a drunk decision to drive versus and you know you drive really bad and hurt someone versus just generally being a shitty driver, is that like which is worse?
Well, I do think, yeah, this is kind of off topic, but as somebody, so I drink every day, okay, but I also don't own a car, and even though I do have a license, I very rarely drive, and I almost don't believe in cars. I live in Korea most of
Oh,
the time.
great!
I'm in the USA now visiting family, but I live in Korea without a car, and I believe in
Yeah, I don't drink. I
bicycling and
also don't like
walking and public
cars.
transportation.
Yeah, my bike is basically over there.
Yeah. So I have a lot of hostility towards a society that's based upon having cars and driving everywhere.
Oh yeah,
But
that's like the most inefficient mode of transport.
yeah, it drives me
And
nuts being in America.
it's very dangerous. It's very polluting. You're
And it
basically
makes
giving.
people. I can even see in my own parents. It made them get old and unhealthy much faster than they would have if they were moving around throughout their day. And now they need a car.
And
Now they can't live without the car. But part of the reason why they can't live without the car is that the last 20 years they've ruined their health by using the car for everything.
yes,
But
driving induced driving. It's like traffic induced traffic. If you're in a
Yeah.
huge city, right, you're just gonna. Uh, you basically have no other mode of transport but a car, so you have to drive if you want to get somewhere. So you're creating traffic, and that's because of the traffic.
But I was going to say also, as somebody who drinks and kind of knows the effect that it has on me, I do think there's a kind of Puritan sort of opposition to drinking that creates a bias in how people think about driving, where other things that cause someone to be also be very, very much worse as a driver, such as being tired because they work so much and they only sleep 4 hours a night, and by the end of their week they're so tired in the morning when they're driving to work. That is not punished, and it's not treated by society as the same level of wrong as somebody who drives after having 3 or 4 beers,
I've seen
even
I
though
heard
it's
somewhere
also
that
very
just being
dangerous.
dehydrated makes you more likely to get into car accidents if you're driving. Just being dehydrated means you making worse decisions.
And of course, busy people who are doing something with their phones, who are making calls, even if they don't use their hands, they're concentrating on their conversations and they're thinking
They're
about the
using
work
brain
that
power.
they're doing, using brain power. Yeah, not focused on the road. And then, so many other examples. People who are fighting with their children while they're driving, and
I guess driving under the influence is just seen as something that's inherently bad.
yeah, I think so, and I think it's because of that. It's because of that social stigma that drinking is not what good people do anyway, and not very much. But working very, very long hours and not getting enough sleep is something that good people do. Good, hardworking citizens do. So if you endanger other people on the road by being being tired every morning, then that's okay.
Yeah.
Or it's not so bad.
Just take a bus or go with the bike.
We don't have tiredness tests. Maybe we do, but I haven't ever heard of them. Or I'd like to know if
how would you
police have.
test for that? Do you have like a chemical in your brain that you can?
Well, you make somebody read something, step out of the car, and sit down and read
just
something,
a cognitive
and see
test.
if like their eyes nod away.
Yeah, it's this guy on cocaine, so your eyes are nodding away.
Yeah, it seems like there's an unfairness there. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say as a consequentialist that that we should undo, because I think in society, in a lot of countries over the last 40 years, the damage done by drunk driving has gone down a lot. It's one of the greatest success stories, the campaign to make people aware of the danger. I think it was very normal before I was born for people to just drive to the local pub and drive home after drinking as much as they wanted. And I think the local police would let people go home, just not even arrest people who were driving very dangerously. Yeah. A lot of other things.
I haven't seen that, but I know that at the start there has been quite a bit of backlash on seatbelts. But yeah, they've also been properly implemented.
In terms of Carson's thing, about indirect harm to animals from things that are unnecessary. Obviously, drinking is unnecessary for people to do. The same way that eating like a lot of baked goods. In Korea, there's a sort of in the vegan community in Korea, which is not very big, but it's there. There's this influence of Buddhism and kind of peaceful pacifist philosophies in the vegan community there. And so there are a lot of people who think that you shouldn't drink alcohol because it's associated with violence, which I have to admit is not true for me, but it's true for a lot of people. So I understand why somebody would get that idea that we should try to get rid of alcohol in our society because it leads a lot of people to violence. And so they have veganism as part of this general pacifist philosophy for a lot of people.
Switch to weed.
Yeah, switch to weed.
Go Rastafari.
I don't know how many of them say that. It's still very illegal in Korea, but
yeah, it's very illegal here too.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying at some of the vegan events. You see a lot of these kind of this literature and people that have this broader view of pacifism that includes veganism, but it also includes being against alcohol. And then at these events, people are just sugar addicts. So I'm going and I'm eating the falafel, and I'm eating I'm going to like these relatively like healthy food lines, but then the longest lines are always for the vegan gelato and the vegan cookies.
Yeah, but I think the argument here is that like alcohol makes you more violent, but sugar doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I understand their philosophy, but in terms of the addiction, addictiveness, I agree. It's hard. That's a hard consequentialist
in
issue,
terms that they're not understandable of the addiction of alcohol, yet they're pretty much incapable of quitting these processed sugar items.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of like blaming people for not doing something that they're chemically dependent upon, and then they're highly chemically dependent upon refined sugar, lots
Yeah,
of fats.
the thing on addiction is I feel like whatever you do in life, you're just gonna get addicted to something. So you better just choose what to, so it's the least productive in some way.
Yeah, make
Because
your
that's
addictions
how.
healthier addictions, like exercise addiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Even though that can go unhealthy, but you can try. Because I guess that's how our brains work. We basically try to find behavior that we can replicate that gives us that's beneficial, and what that means is it gives us dopamine because that's the signal we get for doing something beneficial. And now we got these things that artificially raise dopamine and might actually be harmful, but yeah, we have them and we like them a lot.
So I got one more question for you. I had this talk with Carson that was about violence and the legal system and crime. Since we were just talking about drugs, alcohol, and other drugs and other addictive things, the main thing Carson and I were discussing there was whether just because something is immoral or causes more harm, we should think that it should be illegal, or we should support the government making that thing illegal, using the police to arrest people, put people in jail. How much do you think that the concept of something being morally wrong just implies that the government should make it illegal,
I
versus
mean,
how many things are wrong but they should still be legal for people to choose?
I don't know of any things that I think are wrong, but I also think that people should be like,
What about
if
religions that teach children about hell?
yeah, I think they should be pretty much illegal. It's
Uh-huh.
like because the legal system is the thing that enforces the morals, so it should be somewhat compliant to the morals so it can properly enforce them.
Mm.
But it also can't be so strict that you cannot have any deviation and you can't really test if something is moral or not. So you cannot use it to define morality. It should be defined by morality. You should use morality to define it. So yeah, I do think it should be pretty the legal system should be the thing that's flexible, and morality should be the thing that we're trying to determine, and then base the
Right.
legal system on that.
How powerful do you think that mechanisms other than the legal system are for improving morality in society, such as just rational persuasion, or intellectual arguments, or economic pressure, like a
I
boycott of a company?
so I think if you take all these things together, they're more powerful than the legal system. But separately, I would say just social norms, peer pressure. Those would be the most powerful factors
Yeah, that's what I tend to
than
think,
the
is that
legal
those.
system.
That's interesting to hear.
Or
Yeah,
maybe at
maybe.
least where I live, I don't live in an authoritarian government.
Yeah, when you live, I think when you get closer experience to what police and prosecutors and politicians do when they have power, um, the more skeptical it makes you of their ability to solve problems well. and I end up with the view that we should trust them. We should trust the police with as little as possible, because they get corrupt and they cause more problems often than the problems that they're trying to solve. That's really obvious in the case of drugs, the drug war, but it applies to a lot of other things too. I think a lot of the time we have to try to use the social and intellectual and spiritual methods to improve our society, and we just have to accept that there will be a lot of things wrong with society that can't be perfectly fixed, but it's better to have them not be fixed than to give governments more and more power to try to fix them and create worse problems. I just wondered, what country are you from, by the way?
Bulgaria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had the
In
general accent pretty close.
Where did you think I was from?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, you have definitely an Eastern European kind of sound.
Okay.
But it was kind of hard to me to place. It didn't sound very clearly Slavic, so I was kind of confused. It didn't sound like a Russian or Polish accent at all. So
Yeah, no, I don't really have that really Slavic accent, but I can try.
so what you think? What do you think about trying to promote veganism? How reasonable do you think it would be to try to get your national government to pass more and more laws and get the police to enforce animal rights sort of issues instead of convincing individuals?
I mean, I wouldn't say instead of, because when you're doing that sort of thing, you're usually doing it with convincing other people to do these sort of things. So a law is obviously more impactful than you convincing 10 people to go vegan, but uh, I, I just see a reason to do both. And obviously, it's a lot
Yeah.
harder, it's a lot more effort, and you need a lot more public support, so you need a lot more people to be vegan.
So
It's just kind of with the process.
do you trust your government to your police to enforce a law like that, or do you expect them to just be easily bribed by the animal industry and just corrupted to where the law maybe causes more harm than benefit?
I would say on what timeline?
That's a good. Well,
Because
on the, in terms of the law going ahead of the public morality.
no, I
So
don't think that will happen. But I think the law will follow. But at first, it's gonna be pretty shitty at enforcing it. But maybe after years, I don't know how many, 100 years, then maybe it'll get better and better. It's just kind of how things work. Like we can't, we need to accept that there are transitional time periods for pretty much any process of change.
sure, I don't know, how many years we're talking about, but I'm very convinced that the public moral consciousness and the ideas that the society, that the public considers normal, have to change before major changes in the law will work.
I don't think they have to. I think that's just how things are going to go. I don't necessarily think one has to come after the other, but both have to happen at some point. What do you think about that?
I think that probably both will happen, because when the societal views change, then people do want to change the law. I think it's very dangerous when you have a split society and you have certain pockets of political power that can get laws changed, but they don't agree with the majority of the rest of the population. You know, I'm terrified right now about what's happening with abortion law in the U.S. Because it's a very divided moral issue.
It's a
But I think
polarized thing for sure.
some it's a very complex and difficult moral issue that I think should have continued to be debated morally and intellectually, without the force of the police. And now different states in the U.S. are criminalizing nearly all abortions with penalties that are similar to murders, to ordinary murders. And then other states are the complete opposite. And it seems terrifying. It seems to put people on the edge of war between different U.S. states, because they're using police power, violence, to as their way to try to deal with this moral problem. I don't like it at all. I don't like what's in the air. It feels like the beginning of a long conflict where speech and arguments and ideas are being rejected, and only violence is left.
I'll be honest with you. Probably for the past year, I've just completely isolated myself from politics in the US and even in Bulgaria, and I don't know what's happening.
Is that because the animal holocaust? I don't have any problem saying that.
Yeah.
Is that because the animal holocaust is so much more extreme than any human issues?
I think it's because I've been busy with different things, because I've been vegan for about 7 years, and I would say the first 3 I was living in this so-called dystopia, but then I kind of, I'm still vegan, but I kind of snapped out of it. It's not like I'm literally walking into a slaughterhouse when I walk into a grocery store.
Yeah, I mentioned this to
Yeah.
Jerome a while ago, but I'm aphantasic.
What does it mean?
If you've never read about this before, we're people who don't have visual imagination. If you ask me to close my eyes and imagine a beach, there's no picture.
I've heard about
sensation.
that. I would say I'm the exact opposite of that. I have a wild imagination.
So I think about that, and usually aphantasics, we don't realize that we are unusual until we're adults. I was maybe almost 30 years old when I realized that that other people were different from me. And I always thought, when people said, imagine a beach, that they were just they were using like metaphors or something like that. And it was very strange to find out that you're in a minority of humanity. But
yeah, and
but
you
in
can't
terms of
imagine
veganism,
that.
like I started thinking about that more and more, when I see the meat section of a supermarket, or when I see advertisements on TV, or all of these other things, they they don't bring into my mind the memory of the slaughterhouse. They don't I don't have the vision of watching Dominion come back into my mind. I don't
Yeah,
have
I
those.
remember at the start when I just walk into the grocery store, it was I would literally get like hallucinations from Earthlings, things I've seen just come back.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
terrifying to even imagine what that must be like for, I guess, a majority of vegans
yeah,
who have that visual imagination, because it's very, very traumatic for me to watch that footage. And I force myself, I watch it from time to time, again and again, to remind me and to keep my passion, But I can't get that just from the section of the supermarket. So
hmm
I don't I don't know how to relate to some other vegans who go through. That's the level of dystopia that they're experiencing. That's
yeah. And then you got those carnivore people that they're like, okay, veganism is is linked with depression, and they completely overlook that. You know, uh, realizing that you're living in a literal holocaust that might be linked to depression, maybe.
yeah, exactly.
And
And also, like, this part of dystopia that does affect me, maybe the sensory, because also aphantasics, I think, are proven in a number of studies to have much lower rates of PTSD. Aphantasic soldiers have much lower PTSD
mm,
because they don't relive the sights and sounds of seeing people killed. They just have a memory of it as an idea.
so if a memory comes to you and you don't relive it, like what is it like to have a memory of
It's
something?
like facts, concepts, facts about what happened, facts about the world.
Mm.
It's a bunch of connected concepts and knowledge that's not like in a sensory form or words.
To me,
Um,
it sounds like, in a sense, it's good that it's simplified because you would have a much broader view on something, but you also couldn't remember some intricate details because you don't have that extra information of, auditory information, visual information.
yeah,
It's it's not
it's
retained.
hard. It's hard for us to imagine you guys as much as it is for you to imagine us. But
Yeah, it's almost impossible to imagine someone else's
yeah,
experience.
I'm thinking a lot about like the fact that maybe I don't have that element of dystopia so much, but I have this other element, which is that I know the facts, and I know that this is the worst thing that's ever happened by far. The animal holocaust, factory farming holocaust, and it makes all the other issues just
Fail.
fade away in
Yeah.
importance, and the it just jumps to the top of the priority list. All of the issues involving these huge numbers of non-human animals, and then political debates that about trans athletes in women's sports and stuff. You know, people get really angry about on both sides,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're living our every day surrounded by something that's just literally millions of times more significant than either position in that debate.
Yeah, and then you have to listen to your mom being upset about a reality show,
yeah.
and you're like, okay, I'll try to take you seriously just so you're not upset.
Somebody lied to somebody else. Oh my goodness. Somebody cheated on their partner, and then the whole time the people that are arguing about this are just consuming
you know David
body
Rams,
parts
right?
of tortured animals.
Yeah, you know David Rams.
Yep. Oh yeah.
He had these shorts where he would just have something irrelevant play, like some girl playing some ball game, and then he's like, "Did you know that in the egg industry, male chicks are ground alive?" And then he's showing the footage.
Oh yeah,
vegan,
I like that vegan meme where they say like, what would a recent human news story be like? Yeah, the most shocking thing about Biden's accidental racial slur is that 70 billion chickens are tortured and murdered every year. Yeah, it's a great.
It's a good
ultimate dark humor, but yeah, I like that meme. I like sticking that in there, drawing the comparison between whatever the news cycle outrage is, and I want to say the stupid outrage, but that's such a problem. It's like I just can't care.
But when you have the comparison in your head, like the weight of animal agriculture, that just seems stupid to you.
Yeah, it just completely drowns out almost anything concerning humans. Because even the large things involving humans, the genocide and the Ukraine war and
we kill more
sex
animals,
slavery and stuff. Yeah,
we kill
those
more
are important.
Animals each year than there have been humans in all of human history.
Yeah, more completely unnecessary suffering, in a year probably than all of the suffering of all of our ancestors since we've been humans. Hi, Carson.
Hey,
yeah, we had a good talk.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're still here.
I'm looking forward to going through and listening to it. I do gotta take this computer actually, so I do gotta end this one. But yeah, I'm glad you guys had a good talk. And let's get you. How do you? Is it just Dillian?
Yeah, I'm Dylan.
Just Dylan, like Bob Dylan.
Yeah, you can just say that.
Say Dylan.
Okay. Yeah, there's a buddy that both me and Jeremy have talked to that's come on here named Akash, and I'm getting better at pronouncing it, but I think it's like Akash instead of Akash. But yeah, I'm really bad with figuring out how to pronounce names. But anyways, if you want to come back on sometime, do a talk with just me or me and Jeremy, my email is in the about section on my channel. And yeah, it was good talking to you earlier when I was here.
Okay. Nice meeting you, and yeah, great talk.
Nice meeting you too.
All right, take care, guys.
I guess it's good night for you too, right?
Yeah. No, it's almost 1:37 here. Oh, it's.
Where are you at right now?
Where I'm in Bulgaria.
Bulgaria? Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. And it's 1:37 there. Yeah, it's 3:37 here. So PM, not AM. So, but for you, it's AM or?
Wait, what was yeah, that's AM.
Like so it's nighttime for you.
It's 13:38.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Oh, okay. So PM. Gotcha. Okay. I forget that most places don't do AM PM. Yeah. Okay. It's a little after lunchtime. Gotcha. Okay. Well, sounds good. You guys have a good one.
Wait. No, it's 1:38. It's 1:38.
Okay, you had me confused.
I need to go to sleep.
Okay, so yeah, it is nighttime for you. Gotcha. Cool. All right, sounds good. Talk to you guys later.
Take care, guys. Okay. Bye.